Chapter 537. It had to be said that Li Hongyuan's understanding of his own mother was very limited. However, this limited understanding was enough to capture the essence of the imperial noble consort. Or rather, it was the essence that many mothers shared. "Master, how long will mother last?" 15 minutes at most, Master Liaochen answered honestly. Jingwan nodded. She didn't care much about this point. The imperial noble consort had passed away. Under these circumstances, it was already a blessing to be able to see her. She was probably the only person in the world who was so lucky. Then, based on the imperial noble consort's current situation, how long will she last? The 81 altars had cost a lot of manpower and money. There were also many twists and turns in the process. Wasn't it all to prevent the imperial noble consort from disappearing so early? Master Liaochen didn't think much of Jingwan's understanding of this matter. He was very calm. Originally, if nothing unexpected happened, the imperial noble consort would have disappeared when His Highness passed away. However, it didn't go so smoothly. Therefore, the imperial noble consort's time will be reduced. The exact time is uncertain, but a few years is enough. Jingwan didn't know what to say. After all, only the person involved had the most right to speak in this matter. Emotionally, Jingwan felt sorry for the imperial noble consort. However, there was nothing more. Li Hongyuan himself didn't do everything based on feelings. It was an exchange. They did a lot of things, but in reality, it didn't take much effort. Thus, whether the imperial noble consort existed or not, and how long she wanted to live, was the most important thing. Li Hongyuan reached out and held Jingwan's hand. "We've done what we should." "Amitabha," Master Liaochen said. Jingwan felt that there was a deeper meaning to this Amitabha. It also felt like it was purely a catchphrase. As for the imperial noble consort, just as Li Hongyuan said, when she deliberately catered to Lu Qingdi was easily controlled by her. Of course, her previous attitude was there. Even if the imperial noble consort wanted to do something, she would not go too far. Anyway, she was a soul now. Lu Qingdi could not touch her at all. At most, he would say a few soft words. The imperial noble consort sensed that it was about time for her to appear. "Your Majesty, it's about time for Chen Xie to appear. May your Majesty take care of your dragon body." "That's enough. Can Zhen see you again?" Lu Qingdi wanted to touch the imperial noble consort again and again, but he failed again and again. However, Lu Qingdi was unwilling to give up. The person he had been thinking about day and night was right in front of him. She was no different from a living person. She was the same as the one in his memory. But why couldn't he touch her? This was why people were so greedy. When he didn't know that she was still alive, he pretended to be a lover in front of a few tattered portraits. When he knew that she was still alive, he wanted to see her so that he could die in peace. But when he saw her, he wanted to touch her and make her stay. In short, he couldn't wait to erase all the unhappiness in the past and reconcile with her. The imperial noble consort shook her head. "Chen Xie has no more regrets to be able to see His Majesty and Yuan Fer. Chen Xie is already luckier than many people. Chen Xie cannot hope for the next time. If there is an afterlife, it must be a life and death enemy, the kind that would never let go." The imperial noble consort didn't finish her words, but the expression on her face was completely different. There was a bit of sorrow and reluctance. She had a good sense of propriety. Lu Qingdi naturally imagined a lot of things. He couldn't wait to go to the netherworld with the imperial noble consort and be reincarnated together. In the next life, they would be childhood sweethearts and innocent lovers. Then, they would naturally get married. The more he thought about it, the more excited he couldn't help trembling. It seemed that he even forgot his current identity. "That's enough. If there is an afterlife, Your Majesty shouldn't grow up in the imperial family." Lu Qingdi's original strange excitement stagnated at this time. The imperial noble consort smiled, but it was a little bleak. "Your Majesty, people's hearts are made of flesh. Your Majesty once treated this concubine very well. This concubine has seen it all and will remember it in my heart. It's just that people are always greedy. She paused. To have a pair for a lifetime, it's really too greedy. Your Majesty, Yuan-er's relationship with his wife is good now. I don't know how far Yuan-er can go, but I still hope that someone can get what I can't get. At least, let me believe that some things in this world are still possible. I don't care what will happen to Yuan-er in the future. I just hope that Your Majesty won't interfere in the matter between them. I'll take my leave. After the imperial noble consort finished speaking, her figure faded quickly and disappeared without a trace. That's enough. Lu Qingdi subconsciously reached out to grab her. Wait for me. I promise you anything. The imperial noble consort stopped in her ears and didn't say anything. Because others couldn't see, her expression became silent. She stood in front of Lu Qingdi. She knew very well that this man was just impulsive. The imperial noble consort didn't believe what he said at all. The imperial noble consort wasn't a person who thought highly of herself. However, she was actually very disdainful of Lu Qingdi. It should be said that she looked down on men like Lu Qingdi. There was an invisible force on her body. The imperial noble consort knew that it came from Qin Shufei. In the past, when she could still leave her body, this kind of force existed. The imperial noble consort didn't reject this kind of controlled by others situation. She turned and left directly. As for the promise to Lu Qingdi, even if it was a lie, the imperial noble consort felt at ease. She wasn't worried that her words would come true at all because she knew that she wouldn't be reincarnated. Although Li Hongyuan didn't mention this problem at the beginning and Qin Shufei didn't know, the imperial noble consort always had a strong intuition about herself. Perhaps because they heard Lu Qingdi's suddenly raised voice, Jing Wan and Li Hongyuan looked at each other and walked into the room hand in hand. However, before they reached the door, Li Hongyuan stopped in his tracks. Even Jing Wan stopped in her tracks. She's gone. Jing Wan also guessed that the imperial noble consort might have left. However, her husband's reaction seemed a little different. Just now, we should have passed through her body. Jing Wan paused. Although she didn't feel anything, she still felt a little goosebumps when she thought of passing through a ghost's body. Li Hongyuan pulled Jing Wan and turned around. It looked like he was preparing to leave the palace. He didn't appear for his so-called imperial father. Now that he couldn't see the real person, what was the point of staying? As for asking Lu Qingdi to leave, it was no joke. His good imperial father was still reminiscing about his mother. He was a considerate and filial son. When he shouldn't disturb him, he would be 100% considerate. When Lu Qingdi came out in a daze, he seemed to wake up a little when he saw Master Liaochen. However, other than Master Liaochen, there was no one else. Even so, Lu Qingdi didn't dare to put on the airs of an emperor in front of Master Liaochen. First, Master Liaochen was unpredictable. Second, he needed his help. Master! Lu Qingdi called out hesitantly. Master Liaochen turned around and gave a Buddhist bow. Amit Ba. Your Majesty, it's better to be open-minded about some things. Lu Qingdi's lips trembled. According to Master Liaochen, we really can't interfere anymore? Your Majesty, there are some things that can't be done the first time. Master Liaochen's words were very direct. Lu Qingdi instantly became dispirited. Master Liaochen didn't plan to stay any longer. He bid farewell to Lu Qingdi and prepared to leave the palace tomorrow to return to White Dragon Temple. Many people didn't sleep well that night. Many people knew about the imperial noble consort when she was still alive. They tried to stop her during the ritual, but they didn't succeed. Those who should know also knew about what happened tonight. A person that they couldn't see had a lot of information that could be used against them. Not only that, she also won Lu Qingdi's heart. Even if she didn't have any information, she could make up something that could be used against them. It was enough to make them suffer. However, even if they knew, they couldn't stop her. They could only wait impatiently. They all stared at the sky until dawn. Their eyes were bloodshot from excessive heat. There was supposed to be morning court today, but it was cancelled because the emperor wasn't feeling well. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/145777135. HTML. Click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 538. This seemed to be expected. None of the courtiers had any objection. They all left and went to their own offices to deal with today's official affairs. Similarly, no one asked to see Lu Qingdi. As courtiers, they should be sensible when they should be. If they went up at this time, it would be annoying instead of flattering him. However, even though they were working in their own places, their hearts were not at peace. Lu Qingdi did not attend court 3 times in a row. In total, it had been more than 10 days. The courtiers did not see him. Even if it was to cherish the memory of his beloved, it was too long. The courtiers would not allow it. Therefore, they jointly asked to see Lu Qingdi. Fortunately, Lu Qingdi seemed to have come out at this time, so they did not worry much. However, this did not mean that they could sit back and relax. They were all waiting for Lu Qingdi's action. In other words, they were waiting for the thing hanging above their heads to fall down. They wanted to see whether it was a lethal weapon or something that they did not need to care about at all. Lu Qingdi did take action, but he only gave Prince Jin a lot of rewards and did not show any other expression. Many people heaved a sigh of relief. Obviously, these people had done something shameful. However, even if they were relieved, it did not mean that they were completely relieved. After all, no one knew whether Lu Qingdi would hold back and make a move in the dark. After all, the power of the imperial court was divided by several princes. No matter who was attacked, the whole situation would be affected. Even if it was Prince Rue, who still looked like a cripple, who could guarantee that he was really harmless? It was just because Lu Qingdi had solid evidence. No matter what these people thought, it would not affect Jing Wan and Li Hongyuan. After all, the appearance of the imperial noble consort was like a protective talisman for them. Although it seemed that it was just icing on the cake, it could also save them a lot of small troubles. If small troubles kept coming, it would make people very angry. In fact, all parties knew what position Prince Jin was in now. Therefore, no one would foolishly look for trouble at this time. Otherwise, it would definitely cause the emperor to be furious. Even if the officials in the court took sides, who would be able to oppose Lu Qingdi directly? No matter how mediocre he was, he still held great power. As the saying goes, when the emperor is angry, millions of corpses will fall. In this way, it gave Jing Wan a peaceful environment to nurture the fetus. Jing Wan suspected that her husband had delayed the emperor's meeting with the imperial Gue Fei for this purpose. Did that mean that he already had a plan to get pregnant? Then, her husband's feelings for that child seemed to be more complicated than she had expected. At this time, Jing Wan got the news that Duchess Ding was gone. Jing Wan was immediately startled. Her heart was a little complicated. To be honest, Duchess Ding was not a likable person, but she was Sun Yijia's mother. Even if Sun Yijia had a bad relationship with her, it was mainly later. Sun Yijia must have feelings for her. Moreover, it was because of Sun Yilin that she fell ill. She couldn't deny her love for Sun Yilin. However, this kind of love was obviously too much. The strong desire for control made the relationship between mother and son worse and worse, to the point that there was no room for recovery. In the end, she was Duchess Ding, so the prince's residents should go and offer their condolences. On one hand, Jing Wan was worried about Sun Yijia. On the other hand, she couldn't help but think of Sun Yilin. He was also a righteous and upright person. The last time she saw him, he was still on the road to Jiangnan. After being an official for a few years, he must have changed. She just didn't know if the change was big. There was a trace of curiosity in her heart, but she quickly threw it to the back of her mind. How he was had nothing to do with her. In addition, there was a super vinegar jar, so even if it was purely out of curiosity, it was better not to ask. Jingwan first sent someone to see Sun Yijia. She learned that although Sun Yijia's spirit was not very good, it was not too bad. After all, she was a pregnant woman. The people around her would definitely try their best to comfort her. This was not a burial in a day or two. Moreover, even if they came to offer their condolences, it would be done in batches. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan's time was neither the first nor the last. In fact, they just went through the motions and offered an incense stick. Given Jingwan's current situation, Li Hongyuan naturally did not allow her to stay in Duke Ding's mansion for long. However, coincidentally, when they left Duke Ding's mansion, they happened to meet Sun Yijia, who came back in a hurry. When they met head-on, the atmosphere was a little tense. The living hell could hardly control his emotions. He looked at Sun Yilin as if there were knives in his eyes. Jingwan just glanced at Sun Yilin. To be honest, if she hadn't heard the words of the servants of Duke Ding's mansion, she wouldn't have recognized him at all. Sun Yilin's face was obviously wrapped in layers of white cloth. It was obvious that he was injured. Moreover, his whole spirit was different. His gentle aura was gone, and he seemed colder, even with a trace of gloominess. Even his figure had changed a little. Of course, this was not surprising. After all, he was only 20 years old. It was normal for some changes to be made in 2 or 3 years. Jingwan was a little shocked. She didn't know what had happened to him, but her attention was first on the man beside her. She was afraid that he would make trouble if he didn't agree with her. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/146072221. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website, bicken.com. Chapter 539. Sun Yilin probably didn't expect to see Jingwan so unexpectedly. He was travel-worn and in such a sorry state. Jingwan could choose to be wary of her husband and treat him as a passerby, but he obviously couldn't face Jingwan calmly. It could only be said that from the beginning, Jingwan had become a cinnabar in his heart. Even if he cut it out, it would leave a scar that wouldn't disappear for the rest of his life. Moreover, for him, it was impossible to cut it out. At least, he hadn't succeeded for a few years, and it became more and more deep-rooted. It could be said that Sun Yilin's current situation was the result of Li Hongyuan's calculation. But don't forget that at the beginning, Li Hongyuan thought highly of him and was ready to put him in an important position like in the previous life. He even solved the regret in his heart, to protect his beloved sister. Now Sun Yilin's life was happy. Her husband's family elders treated her well. Her husband's career, fame, and wealth, but she was the only one. Many people were envious and jealous. It was just that Sun Yilin fell in love with Jingwan first. Li Hongyuan was just pushing the boat with the current. To be honest, even if Li Hongyuan didn't exist, there might not be a good result if he and Jingwan got together. He had such a mother who deliberately made things difficult for him. Then, the possibility of Sun Yilin not being schemed against was zero. Jingwan was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. Once Sun Yilin had another woman, it would definitely be over between the two of them. In the end, Sun Yilin was still under too many shackles. Even if he was the #1 young master in the capital, he was still in the palm of someone else's hand. This point had nothing to do with age. If it were now, perhaps it would be different. After all, he could barely control his own life now. However, this assumption obviously didn't exist. Jingwan was not dead set on him, nor was she unable to get married. Without that living king of hell who tried to change many things, it would be someone else. Before falling in love with Li Hongyuan, Jingwan was always rational. She knew that it was inevitable that she would get married when she reached the age. Li Hongyuan saw through this very clearly, so he could easily get rid of Sun Yilin, who was originally a rather threatening love rival. Actually, he had spent quite a bit of effort on Chen Zhengmin. Although Sun Yilin had changed a lot, but the upbringing in his bones still existed. Moreover, as someone who had mingled in the officialdom for a few years and was still alone in a foreign land, some things should be obliterated, some things should be infected. To be able to maintain one's original heart, it could be said that there were not many that could be found. From Sun Yilin's changes, it could be seen that at least he was not in this category. Therefore, no matter how impatient he was, when he met Jin Qin Wang, it was very wrong to just stand there and stare blankly. Sun Yilin reached out to cover his face. There was no emotion in his eyes. It was full of indifference. It was just that his whole person seemed to be fixed and somewhat stiff. The people who were looking at him were not in the minority. To be honest, if it wasn't for the manservant who was following him and the feeling of familiarity, these people really didn't dare to believe that this was the same person. In the past, when they, the servants, talked about this person with their heads held high and their chests puffed out, the difference was really too big. In the end, what happened? This change was no longer surprising, but it was unbelievable. Darren! Sun Yilin's manservant cautiously called out. Sun Yilin returned to his senses and put down his hand. Turning a blind eye to the people around him, he walked straight into the Fu. The deeper he went, the more people he met. And those people, whether it was servants, guests, or even the masters of Duke Ding's Fu, their first reaction was, "Who was this person? However, because he had entered the gates of Duke Ding's Fu, he should be a guest. At first, he just asked about the location of the morning hall. This was a place where he had lived for more than 10 years, so naturally, he didn't need anyone to lead the way. There were not many people in the morning hall, but there were also quite a few people. Sun Yijia and Luo Jinghua were both there. Soon, people noticed Sun Yilin one after another. As for his manservant, obviously, this was not a place where he could come in. Therefore, no one recognized him at first. No, it should be that they even guessed who he was. Sun Yilin stared fixedly at the morning hall. Now, he could only see a coffin. If Sun Yilin wanted to see it again, he could only wait until the burial. His expression was still visible on his face, or rather, his emotions. His whole person was stiff and numb. At this moment, Sun Yilin thought a lot, but it seemed that he wasn't thinking about anything at all. It seemed that he was deeply guilty and blamed himself for his mother's death. After all, when Duchess Ding fell ill, he did play a big part in it. However, it seemed that it had nothing to do with him at all. He stood on the sidelines and watched indifferently. Sun Yilin was really strange now. As the master of Duke Ding's Fu, especially Sun Yilin's brother, he couldn't let this situation continue. Just as he was about to step forward, Sun Yijia moved first. She hurriedly stepped forward, but stopped when she was 3 steps away. She cautiously and timidly said, "Fifth brother." Sun Yilin finally reacted. He looked at Sun Yijia. Perhaps it was because she was his most beloved sister, but he forced a smile. It seemed that he hadn't smiled for so long that he didn't know how to smile. Little sister. After confirming his identity, Sun Yijia's tears immediately rolled down. Her eyes were also full of disbelief. "Fifth brother, what happened to you? How did you become like this?" "Don't worry. I'm fine. It's just an accident." Sun Yilin tried to say it as casually as possible. How could he be fine? He looked terrible at first glance. Sun Yijia stepped forward and reached out her trembling hand. Sun Yilin avoided it and glanced at her belly. "You're pregnant now. I didn't wash up. I'm not clean. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/146262257. HTML. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Calm. Beacon. Calm Beacon. Calm mobile version reading website. Beacon. Calm. Chapter 540. After burning the incense, Sun Yilin seemed to have become a wooden stake again, looking at the spark at the top of the incense. And this time was enough for the people around to come back to their senses. It was really hard to describe their feelings. Some were sympathetic, some were sad, some were indifferent, and some were gloating. Sun Yibin, who had been the fiercest with Sun Yilin, obviously belonged to the last situation. In his eyes, Sun Yilin occupied his mother's attention when he was born, and as he slowly grew up, his younger brother's infinite talent made all the brothers in Ding General Manor pale in comparison. When it came to Ding General Manor, it seemed that only Sun Yilin was mentioned. If it was just this, it would have been fine. He was the eldest legitimate son and should be the legitimate heir, but the emperor, who was indifferent to the whole Sun family, also liked this younger brother very much. For him, the emperor suppressed him and did not confer the title of heir. How could he not be jealous? How could he not hate him? When his younger brother was only a few years old, he almost killed him. Sun Yibin did not regret it at all. Anyway, even if he really died, even if they knew it was him who did it, his parents would cover it up for him. After all, Ding General Manor was the head of the nobility. Face was very important. Unfortunately, why didn't he die? Since then, his mother had protected his younger brother so tightly that he had no chance to kill him. He had always been a thorn in his side, but he could do nothing to him. His grandmother had adopted him. To some extent, it could be said that he was no longer a threat to him. But in his heart, he was not very happy because his grandmother's essential purpose was still Sun Yilin. His grandmother regarded them as a burden to her younger brother. The whole Ding General Manor was not a symbol of high status and wealth, but a pile of filth. How could he not be angry? However, this younger brother was far away in Zhongnan. Ding General Manor was high and powerful, but he didn't even have the status of a legitimate heir. How could he mobilize people to make trouble for Sun Yilin? It was really beyond his reach. Now he was back, and came back in such a ghastly appearance. Ha ha ha. Fifth brother, you still know to come back? I sent you a letter so early, but you just came back to the capital now? Mother valued and loved you the most. Not only did she fall ill because of your marriage, but she also insisted on leaving the capital. It was fine if she couldn't come back after leaving the capital, but she didn't even send a letter. You don't know how sad she was. Before she died, all she wanted to do was to see you one last time, but in the end, she died with everlasting regret. Sun Yilin, did you know that mother refused to close her eyes when she entered the coffin? You. The more Sun Yibin spoke, the angrier he became. The veins on his neck and the back of his hands were bulging, as if he was trying his best to suppress his anger. He glared at Sun Yilin, his eyes full of grief, as if he wanted to eat him alive. These words were not only to accuse Sun Yilin of being unfilial, but also to attribute the death of Duchess Ding's wife to Sun Yilin. The people present were not only from Ding General Manor. If these words were true, Sun Yilin would be drowned by their saliva. Everyone would only blame him and would never ask the reason. Besides, the marriage was originally arranged by the parents. Because of this, it was wrong for the children to be angry with their parents. And this was the worst part. What Sun Yibin said was not entirely false. Even though it was not entirely true, truth and falsehood were the most terrible thing. He was ruthless, but he also had a fatal weakness that he could use against Sun Yibin. Sun Yijia was unable to restrain her anger. This eldest brother always had such a disgusting face. Eldest brother, why are you slandering fifth brother like this? What are your intentions? I slandered him? There are quite a few people who know about this. Mother tried her best to suppress this matter because she was protecting him in every way possible. She was afraid that it would damage his reputation. In the end, he is just an ingrate, a heartless and ungrateful thing. You? Little sister, Sun Yilin finally reacted. It's not good for people with two bodies to be angry. In Duke Dinggua's mansion, we are only guests with 3 bodies. Your situation is special now, so you should go back. Otherwise, there are too many people coming and going. It won't be good if you offend them. Fifth brother. Sun Ijia looked at him in a daze. It was not for anything else, but was this really something her fifth brother would say? Before certain things, her fifth brother could be said to be obedient to her biological mother. What fifth brother? In our branch, there are only 2 of us. That's right, the brother and sister were adopted and given to their granduncle who died young. In theory, Sun Yilan's words were not wrong, but it could not be said like that. They were born and raised in Duke Dingwa's mansion. It was absolutely impossible to completely ignore Duke Dingwa's mansion, especially Sun Yilan. If he did not have the education of Duke Dingwa's mansion, how could he become the first young master in the capital? Sun Yilan had already slandered him. Once these words came out, he would be stabbed in the back. Didn't he see that Sun Yilan was trembling with excitement at this moment? Of course, Sun Yilan would only admit that he was trembling with anger. How could Sun Yilan not see the stakes in this? Of course not. To him, it was just that he didn't care at all. He had no future to speak of. In fact, he had no interest in being an official. The only thing he cared about now was his sister and grandmother. At a glance, he could tell that his sister was living well in the Luo family. As for his grandmother, no matter what, she was the old lord of Duke Dingwa's mansion. He didn't need to worry about her. He was alone in the world. What else did he care about his reputation? All right, let's go back. I'm going to pay my respects to grandmother, aunt, and then I'll look for you. I'm afraid I'll have to rely on you to help me while I'm in the capital. Sun Yilan patted Sun Ijia's shoulder and left the morning hall. https://www.beacon.com/11/11807/146479121. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.beacon.com. Biku Pavilion Mobile Version Reading Website beacon.com. Chapter 541. Luo Jinghua saw that Sun Ijia's expression was strange and hurried forward to support her. Ijia, what's wrong? Sun Ijia had a faint abdominal pain. She knew that she was too emotional and affected the child. She hurriedly tried to calm down and exhaled twice. I'm not feeling well. Let's go back. Okay. Luo Jinghua hurriedly nodded and carefully wiped away the tears on her face. Regardless of whether Sun Ijia was really feeling unwell or not, she was not only adopted but also a married daughter. She did not even need to observe mourning, let alone watch the coffin. At this moment, whether it was the Sun family or outsiders, they all remained silent. In fact, with Sun Yilan's explosive words blocking them, Sun Ijia could not even make a splash. Moreover, Sun Ijia was carrying the great-grandson, granddaughter, of the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs. The Minister of Official Personnel Affairs was in a good position now. Although Ding General Manor had fallen because of Prince Ruei and Prince Kong had taken the lead and seemed to be standing at the peak of power again, they still did not dare to confront the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs directly. If possible, they still wanted to rope him in. The relationship between the two families was not good. If something happened to Sun Ijia in Ding General Manor, the Minister of Official Personnel Affairs would not just simply laugh at it. The couple left with their servants, and the news about Sun Yilan spread quickly. Obviously, the higher Sun Yilan once stood, the worse he would be trampled on in the future. Compared to providing help in a time of need, there were more people who would hit him when he was down, especially many ignorant people who followed the crowd. Their greatest joy was to gossip about all kinds of things. Through subjective processing and speculation, they never considered the harm it would cause to the person involved. Sun Yilan went to see old Madam Sunday. The grandfather and grandson talked alone. It was not a long time, about a quarter of an hour. No one knew what they talked about, but after Sun Yilan came out, He finally seemed to have the aura of a human compared to the previous zombie-like appearance. The servants who served old Madame Sun had been serving her for a long time. Although old Madame Sun did not show her emotions, it did not mean that they could not sense it at all. Therefore, although old Madame Sun looked no different from usual, in fact, she was not in a good mood. It could even be said that she was in a very bad mood. This situation was not difficult to understand. One could tell just by looking at Sun Yilan's miserable appearance. Sun Yilan and Sun Ijia were old Madame Sun's two most beloved grandchildren. One must know that she was indifferent to her great-grandchildren. Sun Yilan had become like this. How could she not feel distressed? Several of the people who served her were also old. They had watched Sun Yilan grow up. Sometimes, they even boldly treated Sun Yilan as their junior. They were incomparably sad when they saw Sun Yilan, so one could imagine how old Madame Sun felt. They were very careful when they entered and exited. A few mothers wanted to persuade her, but they were actually the next generation of old Madame Sun's maidservants. When they served old Madame Sun had already experienced many ups and downs. She was calm and introverted. If there was anything, she would not tell them. Old Madame Sun had long been cold-hearted in Duke Dingwa's mansion. Therefore, even though these people had served her for 20 to 30 years, they were not close to her, let alone talk to her like sisters. Instead of comforting her, old Madame Sun probably hoped that no one would disturb her. What she needed was silence. This was indeed the case. If there was anyone who did not know what was good for them and came to her door at this moment, especially those who had certain thoughts and wanted to badmouth Sun Yilan in front of old Madame Sun, they would definitely be asking for trouble. Since Sun Yilan and Sun Ijia were adopted, Sun Yilan was naturally no longer so well off in terms of money. Of course, after going to Jiangnan, Sun Yilan deliberately reduced his food and clothing expenses. Facts proved that he could still live without the luxury of Duke Dingwa's mansion. Therefore, he could still live without the money of Duke Dingwa's mansion. When old Madame Sun adopted the brother and sister, she would not ignore the problem of settling down. Previously, Duke Dingwa's younger brother died young. He had no descendants, so naturally, there was no need to divide the family property. Now that there was someone in this branch, it was natural to divide the family property. Sun Ijia's dowry belonged to this family property. Therefore, old Madame Sun had clearly said that if anyone dared to cause trouble in the Luo family because of this, she would open the ancestral hall and expel them from the family. Suddenly, some people's crooked thoughts were scattered. When Sun Ijia got married, she was the only legitimate daughter of Duke Dingwa's mansion. Moreover, her dowry was arranged according to the specifications of a princess. Although she later married Luo Jingbua and it was reduced a little, it was still very rich. It could make many people jealous and evil. She was not a noble daughter of Duke Dingwa's mansion, so naturally, she should take it back. Unfortunately, old Madame Sun saw through these little tricks at a glance and killed them directly from the source. In addition, she prepared a share for Sun Yilan. In fact, it was not much. It was far less than what would be given to a son of a concubine in Duke Dingwa's mansion in the future. Of course, the premise was that Duke Dingwa's mansion had not declined. Moreover, this family property was far less than the total value of Sun Ijia's dowry. However, in old Madame Sun's opinion, Sun Ijia would not care about this. He was capable. As long as he stood out, these worldly possessions were nothing. Old Madame Sun adopted Sun Yilan simply because she wanted to protect Sun Yilan. After all, the current situation was there. She was not optimistic about Duke Dingwa's mansion. Once the fight for the throne failed, Duke Dingwa's mansion would definitely be thrown into the abyss. Sun Yilan distanced himself from Duke Dingwa's mansion. While protecting him to the greatest extent, it could also be considered as leaving a way out for Duke Dingwa's mansion. However, old Madame Sun, who was waiting for Sun Yilan's meteoric rise, probably did not expect that Sun Yilan would become like this today. In old Madame Sun's opinion, his face was still a small matter. The most important thing was his mental state. The extent of old Madame Sun's heartache was absolutely unimaginable to outsiders. It was just that Sun Yilan said, "Grandmother, I can't go back." Old Madam Sun did not say anything. She just closed her eyes in pain. "Go. Don't come back in the future." Her tone was not heavy, but Sun Yilin could feel his grandmother's deep disappointment in him. Sun Yilin kowtowed to old Madam Sunday. His departing figure was also exceptionally resolute. Old Madam Sun did not mention the inheritance that old Madam Sun prepared for him. Even if she did, Sun Yilin would not want it. Sun Yilin did as he said and went to find Sun Ijia. Sun Yilin did not feel embarrassed about going to his younger sister and brother-in-law to take the autumn wind. Even if he was in such dire straits, in fact, he still had his own pride in his bones. He did not mind going to find Sun Ijia because she was his younger sister, the person closest to him. Therefore, he could be calm about many things. Sun Ijia controlled her emotions and also let the residence doctor take her pulse. Fortunately, there were no effects. However, she did not forget Sun Yilin's words. She reported this matter to old Madame Luo. Without Sun Ijia saying anything, old Madame Luo ordered people to clean up the guest room in the outer courtyard. As for whether Sun Yilin's reputation would be ruined in the future and whether it would affect the Luo family, old Madame Luo obviously did not care at all. This was because she had a balance in her heart. There were some things that she knew very well. Sun Ijia was very grateful to her grandmother for being so understanding. However, Sun Ijia still did not know her brother's specific plans. She also did not know the extent of the injuries on his face and whether it would affect his official career. For a moment, she was really troubled. However, she could only force herself to not think too much. She could not afford to worry now. Sun Yilin arrived at the Luo family's residence and washed up properly. He looked a little more spirited. He did not refuse the physician to take a look at the injuries on his face. In fact, he would not have known if he did not see it. He was shocked when he saw it. After removing the white cloth, the injuries looked pockmarked. Some areas seemed to have started to grow tender flesh, while some areas had some pus. It was painful to look at. However, Sun Yilin was expressionless. It was as if he did not feel pain at all. The residence doctor carefully treated him with the best medicine, the medicine that Jing Wan usually sent over. "Young master, I'm afraid this is not the only injury on your body." Just now, the residence doctor carefully looked at the shape of Sun Yilin's injuries. "This injury does not look light. Young master, you should not hide it for fear of treatment. If you are worried about our third young mistress, you can rest assured that I will cover up for you in front of third young mistress." Sun Yilin was silent for a moment. Finally, he took off his clothes. "Thank you." As for the wounds on Sun Yilin's body, he did not even bandage them. Perhaps he opened them when he was bathing, and it was not convenient for him to bandage them himself. However, it was obvious at a glance that although Sun Yilin had some scruples, he was not very careful. Some places were obviously wet. As a physician, he could not bear to see people like Sun Yilin who did not take care of his own body. Jing Wan was more familiar with the Luo family's residence doctor. He was a conscientious old physician who did not speak much. At this moment, he was treating Sun Yilin's injuries while nagging. Sun Yilin was expressionless. He felt a little touched when he heard a stranger's concern, but more than that, he felt that it was ironic. After everything was treated, Sun Yilin looked more and more like the former first young master of the capital city. Especially in front of Sun Ijia, his expression softened. The residence doctor reduced Sun Yilin's injuries to 30%. When Sun Ijia heard this, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Brother, how did you get this injury?" This was what Sun Ijia was most concerned about. "It was a fire." Sun Yilin only gave 2 words. He did not say anything else. Although Sun Ijia knew her brother's temperament, if there was something he did not want to say, he would definitely not say it. His attitude now clearly showed this. "Brother, what are your plans in the future? Are you going back to Zhongnan or staying in the capital city?" From Sun Ijia's point of view, even if her brother was disabled, he would not lose his position as an official. The problem was whether he could become an official close to the emperor. "Little sister, I don't plan to continue being an official. Sun Yilin said very frankly. Sun Ija's eyes widened and her lips trembled. She had always known her brother's ambition. Now, he said that he did not want to be an official? Was it as simple as the physical pain caused by the fire? https://www.com/11/11807/14692286. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bikan.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website, bikan.com. Chapter 542. When Sun Yilin saw Sun Ija's expression, he reached out and stroked her hair, just like when they were young. Even though it was a little overboard for him to do so at their age, even though they were biological siblings. However, neither they nor the people around them felt that it was inappropriate. It was just that the atmosphere now was inexplicably stifling. However, such a warm gesture did not seem to ease the tension. "Little sister, I think I'm fine. Don't worry about me." However, how could she not worry about such things just because she said so? Sun Yilin looked at Sun Ija. Even though he knew what she was thinking, he did not really care because she was living a good life now. Ever since she got married, her focus had already been reorganized. The people who made her sacrifice everything did not let her down. Therefore, she was worried about herself now. Even if she died, she believed that she would recover after a period of time. Of course, with her current situation, Sun Yilin would not deliberately do anything to provoke her. "Brother-in-law, I'll leave little sister in your care. I'm going out for a walk. After all, I've left the capital for 2 to 3 years. Brother-in-law, don't worry. I'll take good care of Ija. But, do you want me to send 2 people to go with you?" Sun Yilin looked fine now, but Luo Jingbua felt that it was not good to let him go out alone. "No need. After all, I've lived here for more than 10 years. I'm a man. I don't need anyone to follow me." Sun Yilin waved his hand, then called for his servant and left the Luo residence. Sun Ijia and Luo Jingbua looked at each other. With the tacit understanding between husband and wife, they seemed to be even more worried when they saw the worry in each other's eyes. Speaking of which, Sun Yilin actually had many friends in the capital. However, they were all just acquaintances. Using the word friend to describe them seemed to be an understatement. Therefore, it was obvious that Sun Yilin's target was not them. Sun Yilin was dressed in ordinary clothes. His honor was damaged, and the place he went to was not a place where people from rich and powerful families would easily set foot in. In this way, even if some things were to spread, people who did not know him would not know who the main character was even if they stood in front of him and listened to the lively gossip. In fact, the speed at which things spread would not be so fast. Sun Yilin went to the most ordinary tea house. He casually ordered a pot of tea and poured it into a cup. Sun Yilin seemed to not care at all. However, his servant's younger sister felt distressed at this time. He had been following Sun Yilin for almost 10 years. In his eyes, his young master was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. In the past, his young master used the best things to eat and wear. He was especially particular about drinking a cup of tea. For this kind of tea, he just threw a handful of tea leaves into the pot and mixed it with boiling water. He would not even look at it. Even the lowest servant in Duke Ding's residence would dislike it. But now, his young master drank it without batting an eyelid. There were also a few broken tables. There were no elegant decorations. This was a place where people from all walks of life could set foot in. In the past, his young master would hesitate to approach it unintentionally. But now, since 2 years ago, this kind of place was the place that his young master most often went to when he had nothing to do. His young master was clearly a person who should live on the moon and be like a celestial being. Sun Yilin inadvertently glanced at the servant's expression. It was just like the expression on his face. He knew what he was thinking. Sun Yilin picked up a salt-baked bean and flicked it on his face. "What are you staring at? Sit down." The manservant had a miserable look on his face as he slowly sat down. It was as if there were nails under his buttocks, and he couldn't sit still. He had no choice. He was a servant. How could he sit with his young master? If he was still in Duke Ding's residence, he would have been beaten to death. However, he also knew that in such a place, if there was a clear distinction between master and servant, it would be really eye-catching. Others would look at his young master strangely. However, no matter how many times this kind of thing happened, he still couldn't get used to it. Sun Yilin was too lazy to pay attention to him. Because sometimes he really needed someone to do some things, and this servant had always been loyal to him. Because, even if he was a bit wooden, he would always keep him. Although there were no secrets in this kind of place, it was a good place to inquire about some gossip. Although it was true and false, Sun Yilin had already practiced the skill of removing the false and pure. He would always get some useful information. The situation in the capital and the struggle between the princes were not things that he wanted to pay attention to. What he wanted was some gossip. If he was lucky, he didn't need to do anything to know. If his luck was bad, it was just a matter of spending a little money. In fact, Sun Yilin's luck today was not bad. The table on the side was gossiping about Jin Qin Wang Fu. In the past 2 to 3 years, Jin Qin Wang's presence had weakened. However, Jin Qin Wang Fei could always create a topic from time to time. Sun Yilin's elbow was propped on the table, holding a teacup with a small gap. The teacup was a finger's length away from his lips and he didn't move for a long time. Those who didn't know would just think that he was lost in thought, thinking too seriously about something and didn't respond to the outside world. However, as his servant, he was a little frightened at this moment. He finally understood the reason why his young master came out and complained incessantly in his heart. Why was young master still thinking about Jin Qin Wang Fei? There were so many good girls in the world, just like that Min Xiu and Miss Min who liked young master very much. Why was young master so stubborn? That was Qin Wang Fei No matter how much he thought about it, it was useless Not only would he not get what he wanted, he would also make himself miserable. Just like now, he was obviously very concerned but he couldn't even ask openly. Why bother? Why bother? Why bother? However, no matter how colorful the servant's heart was, he didn't dare to say a word. He couldn't even tactfully express it. He was sure that if he said a word, he would be chased away by young master. Sun Yilin sat there for 2 hours. In this small tea house, this was quite rare because the people who came in and out were ordinary people. How could they be so free? It would be good if they could sit there for a quarter of an hour. Those hoodlums had the time, but how could they sit there quietly for 2 to 4 hours to drink tea? The people who came in and out didn't do anything, but the shopkeeper and the waiter looked at him countless times. Although the servant didn't feel his young master's obvious emotions, he still felt that it was very scary and trembled with fear. When he first went to Jiangnan, he was very busy because he was the only one by his young master's side. It could be said that his feet didn't touch the ground. Gradually, there were fewer things for him to do. Now, he could be idle most of the time and his young master wouldn't be angry with him. However, he wanted to say that his young master was getting more and more difficult to serve. Although he didn't want to slander his young master, this was the truth. In the past, he could still figure out his thoughts. Now, he was unfathomable and unpredictable. Sun Yilin finally paid the bill and left. He didn't go anywhere else. He went back to the Luo family, took a book, and read it quietly. Knowing that Sun Yilin was back, Sun Yijia breathed a sigh of relief. Since he couldn't find out some things from his brother, he wanted to ask his brother's servant. However, the servant was very busy. Sun Yijia also understood that his brother was determined not to let him know more things. Therefore, he could only give up. Sun Yibin was committed to discrediting Sun Yilin. It was obvious that he didn't want him to have a chance to turn things around. Therefore, he spared no effort to spread rumors. At this moment, he completely didn't care about the family's dirty linen. Originally, Sun Yilin couldn't hinder Sun Yibin at all. However, Sun Yibin was narrow-minded, jealous, and loved to hold grudges. He would only stop when Sun Yilin was trampled to death. Didn't other people know this? They knew, and the number of people was relatively small. Even old Madam Sun knew, but she didn't stop it. It wasn't because she was disappointed with Sun Yilin and allowed others to trample on him. It was because she knew that her grandson now couldn't be hurt by rumors and slanders. Reputation could no longer bind him. Therefore, she coldly looked at Sun Yibin jumping around. A brainless thing. He couldn't see that Duke Dingwafu was in danger. He didn't do proper things and only thought of these crooked ways. Regarding Sun Yilin's matter, the people of Jin Wangfu had unanimously concealed it from Jingwan. In fact, Jingwan was also somewhat curious. That kind of curiosity was equivalent to facing a stranger. It was like knowing that something seemed to have happened to someone recently. Therefore, when she talked to people, she would naturally ask. That was all. However, Sun Yilin's identity was a bit special. She was afraid that a certain lunatic would find trouble with nothing to do, so she simply didn't ask anything. She didn't know, and it wouldn't affect her. She didn't know, but Li Hongyuan knew. In contrast, his expression was not very pleasant. Because Li Hongyuan was very clear, once a person didn't care about his reputation, it would be a terrible thing. Especially for someone like Sun Yilin who didn't lack intelligence and wisdom. If he really wanted to do something, sometimes, it was impossible to guard against it. For a person to have a big change, there must be a reason, especially this change in a short period of time. Li Hongyuan passed down the order to let people go to Jiangnan to investigate Sun Yilin's affairs in the past 2 or 3 years. It wasn't that he was making a fuss over nothing, but he knew that the other party was still thinking about his wife. He might not care about anything else, but only this matter. There was no room for discussion. He always had to be prepared. At that time, depending on the situation, if it exceeded certain limits, Li Hongyuan didn't mind secretly getting rid of Sun Yilin. It was not difficult to let a person die in an accident. After that, Sun Yilin stayed in the Luo family very obediently. He basically didn't go out. No matter how fiercely the people outside scolded him, this kind of thing could at most satisfy their mouth. Other than that, they couldn't do anything else. It wasn't until Duchess Dingwa's wife was about to be sent out of the capital and returned to the ancestral land for burial that Sun Yilin appeared. Obviously, Sun Yilin was furious, and forbade him, a disloyal, unfilial, heartless, and unjust person, from holding his mother's coffin. He told him to get as far away as possible, not to tarnish the lintel of Duke Ding's mansion and damage the reputation of the Sun family. The others didn't have the same extreme reaction as Sun Yilin, but obviously, they all invisibly rejected Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin still had no emotion and just looked at Sun Yilin. Sun Yilin's scalp tingled under his gaze. How could he not be curious about the reason for Sun Yilin's change? He was gloomy and treacherous. His face was like a dead man's. No matter how good this kind of person looked, he would still make people feel that he wasn't a good person, not to mention that he was injured now. When they were face to face, Sun Yilin wasn't afraid of him at all, but now he inexplicably lacked confidence. "If you're done, get out of my way." "You." Sun Yilin's eyes widened. His graceful bearing was completely gone, and he looked very ugly. Sun Yilin lost his patience. He reached out to push Sun Yilin away and strode into the coffin. Then, when everyone was caught off guard, he reached out and forcefully lifted the lid of the coffin. When it fell to the ground with a bang, everyone came back to their senses. "Sun Yilin, what are you doing?" This time, Sun Yilin wasn't the only one who was furious. Sun Yilin turned sideways and looked at the angry crowd. His eyes finally changed and became gloomy and terrifying. "Get out." The others seemed to be really frightened by him. Sun Yilin no longer cared about them. He turned around and stepped on the stool where the coffin was placed. The coffin couldn't fall to the ground before it was buried. Although it was early August, the weather was still hot. However, because ice had been used, Duchess Ding's body didn't show any signs of decay. Sun Yilin held the coffin with one hand and stared at Duchess Ding's emaciated appearance with half-closed eyes. In the end, tears welled up in his eyes and slid down his cheeks. After all, she was his biological mother. She had once given him the best of everything. Even if he had a strong desire for control, it couldn't erase her true love and devotion to him. Her initial illness was indeed related to him. Moreover, a person's death was like a lamp going out. No matter what she had done, what reason did he have to continue to blame her? Sun Yilin reached out his hand with a trembling hand and covered Duchess Ding's eyes. "Mother, I'm back. It's your son's fault for not being able to see you for the last time. If there is an afterlife." Whether they were mother and son again or not, Sun Yilin seemed to be unable to continue. Finally, he said, "Please rest in peace." His finger brushed across her eyelids and then he took his hand away. Duchess Ding finally closed her eyes completely. Sun Yilin clasped the edge of the coffin so hard that the back of his hand turned white. It seemed that when he reached a critical point, he loosened his hand indifferently. However, it was not only his hand that loosened, but also his nerves that had been tense all the time. Even if he tried his best to control it, he couldn't resist his consciousness in the end. He fainted in a very short time. Then his body tilted and he fell off the stool. The fall was not light. There was a moment of silence. Sun Yilin's manservant was the first to react. "Your Excellency." He hurriedly rushed forward and wanted to help Sun Yilin up. Originally, Sun Yilin rushed back after receiving the letter from the capital city, which was against the rules. However, no one really cared about this. Therefore, Lu Chengdi was not surprised to know that Sun Yilin had come back. However, Sun Yilin's resignation was more than a surprise. Lu Chengdi went to see Sun Yilin at once. After seeing Sun Yilin, Lu Chengdi's first reaction was the same. Was this really his honorable nephew? Lu Chengdi didn't ask Sun Yilin how he became like this. "Yilin, I've always thought highly of you. Although something happened to you now, in my opinion, it doesn't have much impact. It's not as serious as your resignation. Thank you for your appreciation, Your Majesty. However, I only know outside that the past 10 years were a little narrow-minded. To tell you the truth, the injury on my body is not only on the surface, but also on my lungs. The doctor said that if I don't recuperate well, I'm likely to have a chronic illness and shorten my life. So I thought that I might as well take this opportunity to travel outside. On the one hand, recuperate, and on the other hand, observe the people's livelihood. After a few years, if Your Majesty doesn't abandon me, I'm willing to come back and serve you." Sun Yilin slightly lowered his head and said unhurriedly. Lu Chengdi sighed softly, "That's good. Anyway, you're still young. I'll take it as sending you to a foreign place for a few years." "Thank you, Your Majesty." "You don't have to thank me. When you come back, you'll have to make up for these years." "Yes, Your Majesty." "I won't let you down." Although Sun Yilin said so, only Sun Yilin himself knew what he was thinking in his heart. After Sun Yilin left the palace, he had nothing to do with the Qi Yuan's officialdom. Sun Yijia knew that this matter had been settled, so she didn't say anything. She always knew that her elder brother was an excellent person. Even if he didn't go into the officialdom, he could still live a good life as long as he wanted. Yes, as long as he wanted. The problem now was that she didn't know what he was thinking. "Fifth brother, when are you going to leave the capital?" Sun Yijia asked. After a few days of accumulation, Sun Yijia was able to calm down when facing Sun Yilin. Although Sun Yilin didn't tell her his plan, she knew that he wouldn't stay in the capital. In fact, there was no place in the capital for him to stay. The person who was worth staying in the capital was out of his reach. Therefore, if he stayed, he would only get endless pain. Therefore, Sun Yijia supported Sun Yilin's decision to leave the capital. In Sun Yijia's opinion, other than little sister Wan's matter, she could basically stand on his side for everything else. "Didn't you call me Big Brother a few days ago? Why are you calling me that again? I'm more used to calling you Fifth Brother. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. It's just a form of address." No matter what you call me, it won't change our relationship, right? Yes. You haven't told me when you're going to leave. I'll accompany you for the Mid-Autumn Festival. I'll leave after that, Sun Yilin said softly. Sun Yijia smiled and nodded vigorously. After a period of time, no one continued to add fuel to the fire in the dark about Sun Yilin. Moreover, it didn't cause any substantial harm to Sun Yilin. Therefore, gradually, there was nothing new about it. In the end, the rumors died down. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/14692287. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile edition website: bicken.com. Chapter 543. Their time flowed together. It was the Mid-Autumn Festival again. Every year there was something new, or it could be said that there was nothing new every year. There was no telling if it was because Lu Chengdi was getting on in years, but Lu Chengdi seemed to prefer the warmth of home compared to the banquet in the palace. Therefore, he continued the habit of the first 2 or 3 years. During the long vacation, except for those who had to stick to their positions, the rest of the people went back to their own homes. Speaking of which, Jing Wan spent the first Mid-Autumn Festival in the Luo family after she came to the capital. It was very warm and normal. This year, they spent the Mid-Autumn Festival in Jiangnan. It was just the two of them, so they could do whatever they wanted. Last year, they spent the Mid-Autumn Festival in the capital, but they did not pay much attention to the people in the capital. This year, they were going to the palace to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival. Speaking of which, although it was a family banquet, it was a palace banquet after all. It was far from a normal family banquet. However, compared with the outside world, the palace was naturally more sophisticated. Apart from the lanterns made by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the palaces also used all kinds of means. After all, if one came out first, he or she would be rewarded. In fact, the reward was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that it could attract Lu Chengdi's attention. Whether it was the concubines or those little princes and princesses, they were all very keen on this. If the concubines were noticed, they might get favor. If the princes and princesses were noticed, they might get status. Jing Wan let out a silent sigh. There was competition everywhere. In fact, because she had the memories of another life, even though she knew that under the feudal dynasty, a person's likes and dislikes could determine the status of many people, she still felt that it was very unbelievable when she experienced it personally. Although this was the most obvious manifestation of this point, it actually existed in the noble families and even ordinary people. As long as one could gain the favor of the head of the family, then even a kitten or a dog could live a better life than a living person. However, it didn't matter how others fought for her. She had a big backer, so she only needed to watch from the sidelines. When necessary, she could secretly watch the show. And the result of those people fighting for her favor by all means, wasn't it just convenient for others? The colorful lanterns were a feast for the eyes. It really confirmed the saying that only you can think of it, no one else can't do it. Compared to her previous life, some of the craftsmanship was weaker and could not be done. However, in Jingwan's opinion, there were many things that were better. After hanging up the lanterns everywhere, Jingwan and Li Hongyuan strolled around leisurely. Perhaps it was because she was pregnant. Jingwan was particularly fond of lanterns with chubby dolls painted on them. Sometimes, when she looked at them and fiddled with them with her fingers, she would even smile unconsciously. In other people's eyes, just looking at Jingwan, that was absolutely tender and affectionate, they would feel warmth in their hearts. However, the dark-faced demon behind Jin Qin Wang Fei was really too much of a killjoy. That unapproachable appearance made people unconsciously turn around when they were still a few zhong away, avoiding them as far as possible. Jin Qinhuang loved Jin Qinhuang Fei. This could be said to be a well-known consensus. However, sometimes Jin Qinhuang's performance seemed to be very contradictory, such as now. According to common sense, Jin Qinhuang Fei was so happy. Shouldn't Jin Qinhuang also be happy? Why did it seem like he was quite unhappy? Just like how Jin Qinhuang Fei put on a green hat for him. Well, this possibility did not exist. Not to mention that Jin Qinhuang was almost inseparable from Jin Qinhuang Fei. Jin Qinhuang Fei having an affair in Jin Qinhuang Fu was really the biggest joke in the world. No matter how powerless the King of Hell was, how could he not control his own Wang Fu? Therefore, it could be said that the King of Hell's thoughts were different from the rest. It was treacherous and unpredictable. If you couldn't guess, it was best not to guess blindly. Guessing back and forth, you could only let yourself get tangled up and become a mess of hemp rope. Jing Wan could actually feel someone's displeasure. However, except for the forbidden area that absolutely could not be touched, Jing Wan had nothing to fear most of the time. He didn't like this piece of meat in her belly, but she was now closely connected to this piece of meat. Therefore, even if she deliberately threw a small tantrum, he was also helpless and could only compromise in the end. Li Hongyuan looked at Jing Wan's smiling mischief. Sure enough, the black face did not last long. After that, Li Hongyuan completely let Jing Wan do whatever she wanted. Although one was smiling warmly and the other was serious in speech and manner, the atmosphere between the two people was exceptionally harmonious. There was no room for a third person to intervene. The people who followed and served all retreated one zhong away. This kind of atmosphere, who knew how many people were envious and jealous. Although from time to time, the topic of Jin Qinhuang Fei's jealousy would be stirred up. Although many people harbored malice and waited for Jin Qinhuang Fei to fall from grace, in reality, the former had no effect on her. As for the latter, didn't you see that she was already 2 to 3 months pregnant? Her complexion was the same as before she was pregnant, and it even made people feel that she seemed to have become more beautiful. In all likelihood, there was still no one else by Jin Qinhuang Fei's side. Otherwise, even if she was a Tongfang, Jin Qinhuang Fei's state would not be like this. When a man had other women by his side, as a wife, no matter how clear and thorough she could see, it was impossible to be completely unaffected. Especially during pregnancy, this person was easily fragile and easy to let her imagination run wild. There was a world of difference between being in a good state and pretending to be in a good state. Once, twice, thrice, even 4 times, they all wanted to see how long she could be arrogant for. However, until now, they still couldn't see her as a joke. Jing Wan didn't show any signs of falling from grace, causing these people to lose their temper first. It was better to take care of yourself and not care so much about others. In the end, other than a stomach full of anger, there was still a stomach full of anger that had nowhere to vent. Therefore, what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't feel vexed. When they see, they consciously avoid it. The imperial palace was so big, there were many places with lanterns. Wanting to take a look at it was basically something that couldn't be done in a short period of time. After looking at about 1/10 of it, Jing Wan lost interest. Moreover, her exercise today was enough. For the first 3 months, it was better to take it easy. It was true that there were many kinds of lanterns in the imperial palace, but in the end, there was a lack of human touch. There was neither the liveliness of the flower street nor the warmth of each household. The banquet was also held in the imperial garden. Li Hongyuan took Jing Wan to a relatively quiet place. Because it was not in the way, no one would easily come over. In addition, there were people guarding by the side, so he didn't have any scruples to hold Jing Wan in his arms. Jing Wan also quietly leaned in Li Hongyuan's arms, looking at the people coming and going not far away. The gorgeous imperial concubines, the exquisite and gorgeous princes and princesses, the dignified and virtuous princesses, and the elegant princes and princesses. No matter how she looked at it, it was fake. Even if she used her toes to think, she knew that most of these people had a fake face and pretended to be polite to others. Of course, Jing Wan was also very clear that all kinds of situations were not necessarily out of their hearts. As the saying goes, one can't help oneself. She was safe because she had a shelter. The man beside her blocked all the wind and rain for her, so she could be at ease in a corner. Otherwise, she might have become one of them. Therefore, she was not qualified to judge others. After looking for a while, Jingwan yawned slightly. After she was pregnant, she still had some symptoms. For example, compared to before, she was more sleepy. Take a rest. It's still early for the banquet. Li Hongyuan was already used to accompanying her. So, whenever something happened to Jingwan, he would always be the first to notice. Jingwan did not make a sound, as if she had fallen asleep in this very short time. Then, before Li Hongyuan said anything, Nanny Gong had already brought a cloak. In such a day, although it was still a little hot in the day, the wind at night was already a little cold. Jingwan was awakened by a noise. She sleepily rubbed her eyes. What's wrong? Two little girls are just fighting. Don't pay attention to it. Let's go to another place and continue to sleep for a while. It's okay. I'm actually not that sleepy. Jingwan leaned against him to wake herself up and then sat up straight. Then, Jingwan realized that the so-called little girls fighting seemed to be two little princesses. But thinking about it, tonight was the emperor's family banquet. The people who rushed to fight here could not be little palace maids. Other than the little princesses, it could only be the little princesses of the various manors. What's going on? Let's go and take a look. Li Hongyuan actually noticed that Jingwan's curiosity had been a little strong recently, but he didn't stop her. With him guarding, even if there were many people, others had to make way for him. He didn't have to worry about bumping into them. After passing by, the two little princesses were still crying loudly. However, Jingwan's eyes flashed with confusion. What? This did not seem to be a matter of two people. There were clearly 4 people involved. Lu Qingdi had more sons than daughters. Noble consort Su's Princess Minxiang was ranked 5th, and there was a slight age gap between her and the 6th princess. The 6th princess was not even 14 years old, and the 7th princess was only half a year younger than her. At this moment, the two of them were disheveled, their hair was messy, and their eyes were spitting fire as they glared at each other. Obviously, they were the main characters of the fight. Jingwan stood aside and listened to them. She basically knew the cause and effect. Only could express her mood. The 5th princess was married. Although the status of the remaining princesses was different because of their respective mothers, the difference was not very big. However, no matter how small the difference was still the difference. They were not favored, and the position of concubine was absolutely different from that of the little nobles below. The mothers of the 6th princess and the 7th princess were both concubines. Without the 5th princess's suppression, of course, now that noble consort Su had fallen from the throne and Prince Rue had been demoted to a concubine, even if the 5th princess was still in the palace, she could not suppress the other princesses. Now, the 2 princesses were the leaders. They each had their own little followers. They were the ones who fought, but the reason was their little followers. It was just that the little princess below wanted to grab 2 fruit and vegetable lanterns. Grapefruit lanterns, pumpkin lanterns, watermelon lanterns, orange lanterns, apple lanterns, and so on were relatively popular among the people. It was rare for the noble families to see them. The reason why the Luo family had them was that Luo Peishan didn't mind. He just wanted to give the younger generation something to have fun with. However, many high officials and nobles minded it very much. They thought it was beneath their dignity to play with those things that were only for the poor. One of the little princesses' mother came from a small family. She was sent to the summer palace by the people below. Then, she was chosen by Lu Qingdi and brought back to the palace. Those fruit and vegetable lanterns were happy memories of her childhood, so she made 2 for her daughter on a whim. She was skillful and the lanterns she made were delicate enough. Things that were not rare among the people were rare in the palace because they had never seen them before. This attracted the peeping of others. As soon as she grabbed the lanterns, she attracted the big sister of the other party. The 6th princess slapped the little princess who snatched the lanterns. "You're so young and you don't learn good things. Is this what your mother taught you?" Speaking of which, It was not necessarily to seek justice for her little follower. It was purely because the person she protected was robbed. How could she save face? Especially when the other party was intimate with her dead teammate. She was a little girl. After being beaten, she would definitely cry. Moreover, the people in the palace were all shrewd. Although she was young, her lethality was definitely not small. Moreover, she knew the essence of "the child who cries gets meat to eat." As soon as she cried, the people who supported her came. In the eyes of the seventh princess, this good sister was not beating her little follower, but herself. She was so angry that if she said something wrong, she would directly beat her up. Although the palace servants had pulled her away at the fastest speed, it still caused the current situation. "It's good to be young. You're so energetic," Jingwan said with a sigh. From Wan's words, "You think you're old?" Li Hongyuan's eyes were a little deep. "Yes, my heart is old." Obviously, Jingwan did not notice the change in her husband at all. According to Wan, physically speaking, I'm 8 years older than you. Mentally speaking, this meaningful hair made Jingwan, whose IQ was a little damaged, instantly react. She quivered. What was that? In her previous life, she had died in her 20s, while the person beside her was in his 40s. Moreover, experience was the key factor that determined a person's psychological maturity. She had experienced a lot, but the other person might have had more than 70 or 80 years of experience compared to others. Thinking about it this way, she was simply a little seedling, okay? Wan is disdaining your husband for being old. Li Hongyuan seemed a little lonely and sad. Jingwan really wanted to curse out loud. This sad look was even more unbearable than going crazy. Because even if she went crazy, her nerves had been tempered thousands of times, and her endurance was very high. Now that she suddenly changed her style, it was very strange, okay? Other people did not care, but when the living king of hell suddenly acted like this, it would only make people's hearts tremble for no reason. It was the precursor of a big move. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan looking at him nervously, as if she was facing a great enemy. He smiled, like a gorgeous and magnificent purple peony blooming. "Don't be too bewitching." Li Hongyuan raised his hand and gently rubbed his finger on Jingwan's face. "Your husband can't do anything to you now, but we can put it on the account and slowly settle it in the future." "How many debts have you put on me?" Jingwan asked subconsciously. Wan, do you want to know? Your husband can count it for you one by one. Even 3 times a day is not a problem. No need. Jingwan immediately refused. Counting how many knives were hanging over her head, wasn't that looking for abuse? Li Hongyuan showed a slightly regretful expression, missing the chance to add another debt. Although the two people deliberately lowered their voices from beginning to end and did not make any intimate movements, most people's attention was on the two valiant princesses. However, there were still some people who noticed them. "Scoundrel, do you have to be so arrogant and show off your affection? Are you deliberately trying to make people jealous? Or jealous? Or jealous? Okay, you win." The atmosphere was obviously sweet, but their hearts were filled with sour bubbles. Did Jin Qin Wang Fei really cultivate 8 lifetimes of good fortune? Then what about them? Did they create 8 lifetimes of evil? When the younger sisters were in a conflict, the ordinary concubines could not intervene. The elders who could intervene were not present, so only the elder brothers and sisters-in-law had gone out. They did not have a direct elder brother. As for the others, they did not seem to be willing to pay attention to them. After all, if this kind of thing was not handled well, they would not be able to gain any benefits and would also be stained with blood. Although the mothers of the 6th princess and 7th princess were not favored, but their maternal families still had some power. For no reason, no one was willing to make another enemy at this time. The 6th princess and 7th princess were obviously still angry and did not consider the consequences. No one spoke, but it looked like they were going to fight again. Sure enough, in the next moment, they broke away from the palace servants who were holding them back and threw themselves at the other side. "Are you really addicted to fighting?" Li Hongyuan's tone was slightly cold as he opened his mouth. The two who were fighting immediately retreated and looked in the direction of the sound source in horror. It really was Sixth Imperial Brother. The two people's faces turned white. Jingwan knew that her husband was a great deterrent to many people, but these princesses were scared like this. It seemed a bit unreasonable. Could it be that this old cucumber-painted green man had even taught these little girls a lesson? Think about it, if he really taught them a lesson, it was before he left the palace. That was 8 or 9 years ago. The 6th princess and 7th princess were only a few years old. Could this man really do it? Li Hongyuan glanced at Jingwan. He was very clear about what she was thinking and squeezed her hand. In his wife's heart, was he such a bad person? To tell the truth, these people were afraid of him, especially the younger ones. It could be said that when they were disobedient, their mothers used his reputation to scare them. Over time, it became a conditioned fear. Other than this, he really couldn't think of any other possibility. After all, for these younger brothers and sisters, Li Hongyuan completely couldn't distinguish who was who. The number of interactions was 0. Take all 4 of them back, ground them for 6 months, forfeit their salary for half a year. Hire 2 instructors for them and properly learn the rules. Li Hongyuan lightly said. He didn't ask whether the little girl who was robbed at the beginning was innocent or not. Li Hongyuan didn't have the mind to be fair and just. When these words came out, the princesses all trembled, but none of them pleaded. The 2 younger ones even suppressed their voices and didn't dare to cry loudly. After being sent back by their palace servants, the others glanced at Jin Qin Wang and went to do what they should do. Others didn't want to offend people, but Jin Qin Wang was completely unafraid. When everyone dispersed, Jingwan poked Li Hongyuan's waist. Our Jin Qin Wang also has the effect of curing children crying at night? Jingwan, who reacted half a beat slower, obviously already understood and ridiculed. After the little bastard in your belly is born, Wan can personally see if this husband has this effect. Jingwan once again lit a candle for the treasure in her belly. Being Li Hongyuan's child was definitely a very sad thing. I remember that year when I first entered the capital, the younger brothers and sisters at home also fought over the lanterns. However, the elders were happily watching from the side. And that group of younger ones, after the fight, went back to wash and reconciled in a flash. Don't compare with the imperial family in everything. Jingwan smiled. That's right, the more one compared, the more depressed one would be. In the inner palace, there wasn't much true innocence. Not long after, several of the empresses in the inner palace appeared. It looked like they were preparing to worship the moon. However, not only did the empress appear, imperial concubine Su also appeared. Jingwan was really surprised. However, the empress still looked sickly. It couldn't be helped. The after-effects of her reincarnation were too strong. She was actually very lucky to still be alive. As for imperial concubine Su, although Emperor Lu Chengdi banned her from entering the Jade Palace, in the end, there was no clear imperial edict. No one knew why Emperor Lu Chengdi allowed her to come out today. However, the current them, only imperial concubine Qin didn't seem to have changed. Other than her, imperial concubine Wei Xian was also very different from the first time she saw them. It had only been a short time. If it wasn't for their identities being obvious, it was likely that it would be impossible to connect them now with their former selves. The imperial palace was indeed the most nurturing and also the most torturous place. When they were favored, they could be bright and beautiful. When they were out of favor, they would fall into the dust. Everything was ready. Jingwan wanted to go over and worship the moon with the others. Li Hongyuan directly stopped her. No need. Jingwan was a little confused. Even if imperial concubine Su was here, she wouldn't dare to do anything in public. Moreover, she could bring Mama Gong with her. The others also knew that she was special now and wouldn't go near her for no reason. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/14692288. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version reading website. Bicken.com. Chapter 544. Something's Not Right Tonight. Wan, don't leave my side. Li Hongyuan said solemnly. Jingwan naturally listened to him. What's wrong? I don't know for now. It doesn't feel good. Intuition was a mysterious thing. However, Jingwan thought of what he had experienced. Even if she ignored this point, she still chose to believe him unconditionally. Therefore, when everyone else moved closer to the temporarily built moon worship platform, Jingwan still stood beside Li Hongyuan and didn't move. The others saw this but didn't say anything. He was the living king of hell. Now, his position in the emperor's heart had risen to another level. It was absolutely unreachable. To put it bluntly, the emperor almost worshipped him like an ancestor. Others couldn't afford to offend him. His wife was precious now. Naturally, she would listen to whatever he said. Many people thought sarcastically. Everyone had different lives. What could they do? They weren't the imperial noble consort's children. Jingwan didn't say anything. However, she saw that some people were mocking her husband in their hearts. It wasn't easy for him to have an offspring at 25 years old. Naturally, he had to be careful in everything. He used to be bold, but now he was as timid as a mouse. Jingwan lowered her eyes. To put it bluntly, if something happened to her and she had an abortion, this person probably wouldn't frown for the child. His anger would only be because she was hurt. Because of this deep affection, Jingwan was occasionally a little scared. She was worried that she couldn't give the other party the same love, even though love couldn't be measured. When she wasn't sure, she was worried about gains and losses. When she got everything, she could still have some small problems. Jingwan sometimes despised herself. Because he didn't need her to do anything, Jingwan didn't know to what extent she could do for him. However, she would love him with all her heart. However, there was actually a problem. Because she had received the best, most complete love, if one day, the person who gave her this love wanted to take it back or make it incomplete, anyone would probably go crazy. So when that time came, Jingwan reckoned that she would really kill him. On the other hand, Jingwan would never allow anyone to interfere. She would kill anyone who tried to sabotage her relationship. Jingwan suddenly turned her head to look at her husband. At this moment, she suddenly understood. What's wrong? Li Hongyuan was slightly puzzled. Jingwan shook her head. She suddenly understood why her husband was so hostile towards Chan Zhengmin and Sun Yilin and wanted to kill them directly several times. It was because they had feelings for her and coveted her. Even if they were not a threat, he could not tolerate it. For example, if it were some outstanding woman who had deep feelings for her husband and could not forget him, her reaction would definitely not be any better. The most typical example was Ruan Fengfei. However, when she married her husband, Ruan Fengfei was completely out of the picture. She had not opened her heart to him yet. Her hatred for Ruan Fengfei directly stemmed from her scheming against her and the Luo family, so she did not have much feelings in this regard. As for the other people who coveted her husband, they all had a strong purpose. Basically, none of them were really targeting him. His love for her gave her a strong confidence. Perhaps she didn't realize at that time, but she actually didn't put them in her eyes at all. Because they weren't targeting him, but the worldly possessions he might bring, it didn't arouse her vigilance. If Ruan Fengfei was still here, even if she wasn't single, Jingwan would probably want to kill her. She didn't like her love rival, not because she didn't trust the other party, nor was it because the other party might cause trouble and be dangerous. It was because the other party was thinking about her own person, which she couldn't tolerate. This kind of crazy possessiveness was not because others couldn't touch what belonged to her, but because she loved it to the bone. It was only for one person, and there was no such emotion in anything else. Jingwan suddenly laughed. She seemed to have understood something and was happy for some reason. According to her husband's identity and status, she would definitely have love rivals in the future. Jingwan believed that at that time, without her husband's coercion, she would take the initiative to deal with it and strangle everything in the cradle. Even if she didn't kill them, she would let them know clearly that if they dared to come, they had to be prepared to die. So what if it would ruin her reputation? Compared to her husband, her reputation was not worth mentioning at all. Are you stupid today? Li Hongyuan reached out and pinched her face. Even if I'm stupid, you still have to treasure me for the rest of your life. Jingwan said without holding back. Li Hongyuan chuckled. He didn't know what his wife had thought through, but he felt that it was a bit different. Because he, Li Hongyuan, was never someone who only gave without asking for anything in return. The stronger his love, the more his wife cared about him. He was still waiting, but he didn't know that this thought had actually come true at this moment. However, if Jingwan didn't say it, he would probably only find out the next time Jingwan made a move. After the moon worship, Lu Chengdi also arrived late. Afterwards, the Empress presided over the distribution of the mooncakes. However, her body wasn't good, so she had to be supported the entire process. It was a kind of sadness. Thinking about the past, her schemes, her ambitions, without a healthy body, everything became empty talk. Qin Shufei was the one who cut the mooncakes. The mooncakes prepared were big enough and there were a lot of them. However, the emperor's family was not to be trifled with. Therefore, in the end, only a small piece was distributed, and it was gone in 2 or 3 bites. Jingwan felt that the mooncakes tasted good. The banquets in the palace weren't very good, but it didn't mean that the imperial chef's skills were bad. To a certain extent, because there were too many rules and the imperial kitchen was relatively far away, many things no longer tasted the same when they reached the mouth. The imperial chef couldn't do anything about it, but things like mooncakes were different. Therefore, the pastry chef was the one who received the most rewards in the imperial kitchen. Lu Chengdi seemed to be in a good mood today and didn't stick to the rules. He didn't have to sit at his own table. Even the concubines didn't mind sitting at their children's table. For many people, this was a great favor, especially the concubines of the lower ranks. They could only show their faces at the emperor's family banquets. If it was a formal occasion, they wouldn't even have the chance to sit. The only chance they had to sit at the same table with their children was in their own palace, and the children came first. If Lu Chengdi was here, they could only be the person who served the dishes. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan's table was still only the 2 of them. Their mother wasn't at the table, and the children were in their bellies. It wasn't very lively, but they enjoyed it very much. Jingwan raised her head to look at the sky. There were thin layers of clouds tonight, but at this moment, it didn't cover the light of the full moon hanging in the sky. The surrounding stars were scattered, big and small pearls fell on a jade plate. Tonight is also a good night to admire the moon, Jingwan said softly. Li Hongyuan glanced at it and made a sound in response. He didn't care whether the moon was beautiful or not. He was just echoing his wife's words. At this time, the chief steward next to Lu Chengdi walked over. Wang Yi Wang Fei, His Majesty wants you two to move to the imperial table. His voice was neither soft nor loud, and his attitude was very respectful. Because of Su Gue Fei's big secret, Li Hongyuan's attitude towards Lu Chengdi was still not very good. Even though he had been rebellious since he was young, and always opposed Lu Chengdi. Not going. The chief steward's face stiffened, and he cursed Li Hongyuan in his heart. Jingwan smiled. It's the same sitting there. Wang Yi should accompany Fu Huang to drink a cup of wine. The chief steward only wanted to kneel and kowtow to Jingwan. Jin Qian Wang Fei was really too understanding. Li Hongyuan glanced at her and slowly stood up. It seemed that he had compromised. This husband and wife pair, one playing the good cop, the other playing the bad cop. This double act, was very tacit. Li Hongyuan gave a perfunctory bow, and Lu Chengdi's old face was smiling like a flower. With the lesson from the Dragon Boat Festival, Lu Chengdi was much more amiable to Jingwan this time. Of course, Jingwan was pregnant and the imperial Gui Fei had given her a protective talisman. Li Hongyuan didn't speak, so Jingwan chatted with Lu Chengdi with a smile. Perhaps she was really in a good mood. Jingwan didn't say anything funny, and Lu Chengdi could also laugh loudly, causing other people to look askance. In their view, the so-called reward was just finding a reason to call Li Hongyuan to the imperial table. It looked like the three of them were a family, and everyone else was superfluous. Their original good mood naturally faded. Especially Su Gui Fei. She clearly had children and grandchildren, but she was like those concubines who didn't have children, all alone. She lowered her head and seemed to be drinking in depression, but in reality, it was just to cover up the hatred in her eyes that was almost tangible. She had done so much, but in the end, Li Hongyuan, this bastard, was so lucky that his wife got pregnant. And her most outstanding son, the heavens gave him luck, but didn't give him everything. He gave birth to a little girl, and because of this, he was demoted to a commoner. She had spent so much effort, and her hands were stained with so much blood, but in the end, she had fallen to this state. How could she not hate or resent? Therefore, the mask that she had worn for decades, the mask that was almost a part of her face, was finally completely torn off. Now, she didn't dare to look at people directly. Because with just one look, she could reveal her true feelings. However, with Li Hongyuan's keenness, he was more or less aware of Su Gui Fei's emotions. He didn't care and didn't even give her a glance. It had to be said that when Lu Cheng Emperor cleaned up the people in the Jade Essence Palace, there were some things that other people didn't know. However, there were no walls in the world that didn't let the wind pass through. Some things could still be traced. For example, everyone present was well aware that Su Gui Fei and her adopted son had completely shed all pretense of cordiality because of some things. Jin Qinhuang was fine, and other than the title of Gui Fei, Su Gui Fei had nothing left. It was obvious that Su Gui Fei was in the wrong. Speaking of which, during this period of time, the concubines didn't go to the Jade Essence Palace less. To add insult to injury, that was definitely the best show for the women in the imperial harem. It was meaningless to step on those who had no status and no status. That kind of person wasn't worth it at all. Only by stepping on those who were high above and had bullied them before would they feel happy. Su Gui Fei used to be the most favored in the imperial harem for so many years. It was unknown how many concubines had fallen in her hands. Perhaps because she stood high enough, some of the things she had done before were like eating and drinking, she didn't have any impression of it. For others, a gay friend could be a disaster. Thus, if there was a chance, how could they not take revenge? In a banquet held in the imperial harem, regardless of the nature, singing and dancing were indispensable themes. While chatting with others, he slowly ate his food. From time to time, he would glance at the graceful dance moves of the dancers. Occasionally, he would tilt his head to listen to the melodious music of the singers. Otherwise, the melodious music was just as pleasant to listen to. Although she had watched it many times, there was always something different. In order to avoid being too bored or being nagged by Lu Chengdi, Jingwan watched it very attentively. When she took it seriously, she felt that it was indeed not bad. Lu Chengdi's royal table was definitely more sumptuous than other people's tables at any time. 30 to 40 dishes were relatively few. Today was the Mid-Autumn Festival. Looking at the wave of dishes being served, Jingwan estimated that there would be more than 100 dishes. In the end, the total number of dishes that could enter Lu Chengdi's stomach was 3. That was the extraordinary performance of the imperial kitchen. The rest was all wasted. Many emperors said that the treasury was empty during their reigns. According to such a wasteful way, it would be strange if it wasn't empty. Not to mention that if the emperor changed every meal to 8 dishes and 2 soups, and added snacks or something, the number of people in the imperial harem would decrease gradually. Then, the entire imperial harem would save a lot of money every year. Was it wrong for the emperor to have 11 dishes a meal? Don't joke. 7 or 8 people were enough. Unfortunately, the food was also an important symbol of the emperor's identity. Li Hongyuan directly picked up a finger-sized meatball and put it into Jingwan's mouth. Jingwan opened her mouth and ate it. She was too used to it. Looking at it, she knew that it was definitely not the first time. When Jingwan reached out to drink some soup, she realized that there was something wrong with the way people looked at her, especially Lu Qingdi, who was looking at her meaningfully. When she just swallowed the food in her mouth, Jingwan felt a little blocked. She reached out and pinched someone. She forgot about it. Did he also go astray? He obviously did it on purpose. Li Hongyuan's body was basically full of muscles. It was not easy to pinch him. When Jingwan pinched him, it was more like scratching an itch for him. He glanced at her indifferently and added a piece of fish into her bowl. Jingwan's face was indeed much thicker now. However, being stared at by so many people, she still felt a little embarrassed. However, someone was completely unaware of it. He was very happy. If she really stopped him, he would probably attract more attention. Jingwan was quite helpless. She could see that this person was obviously narrow-minded. He was trying to settle accounts. He couldn't do anything to her, so he used this method to draw hatred for her. The world was used to it. It was called public display of affection. The world was reserved and reserved. It was not proper for a husband and wife to hold hands in front of outsiders. It was unconventional, shameless, and even shameless. Moreover, it was always the wife who served the husband. On the other hand, if it was more serious, some people would even ask where the 3 obedience and 4 virtues had gone. Of course, in the eyes of other men, it was indeed improper. However, in the eyes of other women, it was not the case. The accumulated hatred came from them. KSK. Jingwan lowered her eyes slightly and pretended to be dead. Li Hongyuan put down his chopsticks and drank a cup of wine. His eyes met Lu Qingdi's. Imperial Father, why are you looking at me? Lu Qingdi coughed lightly. It was not easy to point it out directly. It's better not to do things that shouldn't be done. Li Hongyuan sneered. Others might want to be reserved. Who was Li Hongyuan? He was the living king of hell, the former devil incarnate. If he couldn't do it, he would do it. Compared to being reserved, he preferred to be direct and violent. I heard that Imperial Father loves Imperial Mother and is devoted to Imperial Mother. I don't believe that you haven't fed Imperial Mother before. His gaze turned and fell on the others. Don't make a fuss over such a trivial matter. When you have nothing to do, you just watch beauties dance. If you're not satisfied, you can change to something else. Staring at us husband and wife, you really have nothing better to do. If you can't stand it, you can do it yourself. This prince doesn't mind at all. Li Hongyuan's peerlessly thick-skinned face didn't blush and his heart didn't skip a beat. However, it made the others who hadn't done anything flustered. Especially Lu Qingdi, who almost choked. He blew his beard and glared at Li Hongyuan. Do you think everyone is like you, evil creature? If you want to be close to your wife, scram back to your own mansion. Close the door and do whatever you want. When you're outside, you have to pay attention to it. Li Hongyuan bluntly mocked. Imperial Father doesn't have anyone to accompany you, and you don't allow other couples to be close. It's so unreasonable. Moreover, you don't have anyone to accompany you now. Who caused this? If you don't like me, you can just issue an imperial edict and confine me to the mansion. Do you really think I want to come to the palace? Last year, in the manor, there wasn't a bunch of messy people. You don't know how happy I was. Li Hongyuan spat out knives again. Lu Qingdi was so angry that his liver hurt. His heart choked and he almost vomited blood. The others were also collectively implicated. They were indiscriminately attacked by Li Hongyuan. They were really innocent. Lu Qingdi trembled and pointed at Li Hongyuan. You evil creature. Will you only be satisfied after I die from anger? Ah. You did it and you don't allow others to talk about it? You're not happy just by looking at her? Li Hongyuan stood up. You're still unhappy. What does your majesty want to do? The atmosphere instantly became hostile. Jingwan was actually fine, but some people's tolerance was not so good. Especially those who were smiling, they were scared to tears. Li Hongyuan seemed to think that he didn't provoke Lu Qingdi enough. I dare to take responsibility for what I do. I'm open and above board. What about you, Your Majesty? There could have been one more person at this table. With a bang, Lu Qingdi slammed the table, bristling with anger. He looked at Li Hongyuan like an angry lion, but Li Hongyuan was not to be outdone. The father and son looked at each other like enemies. In the end, it was Lu Qingdi who was defeated and deflated. All right, there are some things that I don't want to say to you. Today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. Accompany Fu Huang to have a meal. Don't quarrel with me every time. I'm the emperor, your father. You should leave me some face. Li Hongyuan still wanted to say something, but Jingwan reached out and pulled him. When he looked over, Jingwan gently shook her head. Li Hongyuan looked at him for a moment and didn't speak again. Lu Qingdi saw this and felt sour in his heart. It was said that when you have a wife, you forget your parents. This evil creature was really the typical example. However, he didn't know if it was because he personally took this evil creature out of his mother's womb, but he was born to be at odds with him. When he talked to him, he couldn't get along well with him. Sit down. Lu Qingdi waved his hand. Even if it was for this meal, he didn't want to talk to him anymore. He could do whatever he wanted. He would turn a blind eye and pretend that he didn't see anything. If he talked to him, he didn't know what would happen. Lu Qingdi sometimes wondered what sins he had committed in his previous life to give birth to such an evil creature to go against him, but he was reluctant to punish him. However, Li Hongyuan vaguely mentioned the imperial noble consort's death, so Emperor Lu Cheng lost his interest. Li Hongyuan didn't seem to want to compromise, but Jingwan pulled him to sit down. Jingwan's face was a little cautious and a little fearful, but her heart was very calm. She was just wondering what was wrong with this master today, to the extent that he had dragged so many people to be unhappy with him. Obviously, only Jingwan knew that someone had done it on purpose. Therefore, anyone who met him would have to light a candle for him. This episode seemed to have passed just like that. In everyone's hearts, it did not leave too deep of a mark. After all, it was just like how jealousy cursed Jingwan. They were used to it. The first time, the second time, the second time, the second time, the third time, the third time, the third time, they would be numb to it. After the seventh, eighth, and ninth time, they would probably be as indifferent as water. Of course, this was the majority of people. Noble Consort Su had a hunched back and a pair of gloomy eyes. When mentioning the imperial noble consort, her eyes were filled with resentment, joy, and fear. She was most worried that this fire would burn her. No matter if it was her or her son, they couldn't endure being disliked by the emperor again. Otherwise, there really wouldn't be any room for a comeback. Perhaps it was because Lu Qingdi had suffered another blow and his spirit had become a little weak. Perhaps he didn't even think about noble consort Su anymore. Digression, https://www.bicon.com/11/11807/147153777. HTML. There is an error in the chapter. Please click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicon.com. Bikugur mobile reading website. Bicon.com. Chapter 545. Jingwan tilted her head and whispered something in Li Hongyuan's ear. Li Hongyuan put down his wine glass. I think I'll go with you. Jingwan carefully glanced at Lu Qingdi. On the surface, she seemed to be asking for Lu Qingdi's consent, but in fact, she was a little bit mischievous. She wanted to see Lu Qingdi change his face. Lu Qingdi decided to ignore it to the end. Jingwan felt a little regretful. When a subject met the emperor, to prevent himself from being disrespectful, he even drank less water. It was really sad. Jingwan changed her clothes and came out. Her hands were still a little damp after being stained with water. Li Hongyuan stood in the corridor with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the bright moon in the night sky. It was quiet. The flowers and trees outside the corridor formed a beautiful picture. It was beautiful, but it also had a feeling that it could be seen from afar. But when he turned back, he naturally showed a faint smile. The sense of distance suddenly disappeared. Li Hongyuan stretched out his hand to Jingwan. Jingwan put her hand in his palm. Under the moonlight, their foreheads touched, and the tips of their noses touched. It felt so good. "Ah, Yuan, I don't want to go back." "Then I won't go back. Otherwise, I'll go directly out of the palace to the prince's mansion, or go to the lantern market to enjoy the lanterns. If I'm lucky, I might meet the Luo family." Anyway, Li Hongyuan was very clear that as long as he didn't touch the throne, his good father's tolerance for him was so high that it was strange. If he didn't make good use of it, he would feel sorry for himself. "I don't think so. Although you have already swept his face clean, you should take it easy." How to put it, someone was so high profile and showed his presence everywhere, but in fact, trying to cover up makes it more conspicuous. It was just that not many people knew. How many people were so good at secretly usurping the throne since ancient times? However, how many people had the luck to start over? Thinking about it this way, the acceptance seemed to be higher. What does it matter? Nothing. Li Hongyuan's voice stopped abruptly. He looked at the place where the banquet was set up in the imperial garden and narrowed his eyes slightly. His intuition was right. However, they actually played this trick. Li Hongyuan sneered. "What's wrong?" Jingwan was puzzled and looked in the same direction. "Something's wrong. Judging from the commotion, there should be an assassin at the banquet," Li Hongyuan said calmly. Jingwan's eyes widened slightly. Suddenly, she grasped Li Hongyuan's hand tightly. "Something happened when we were leaving the banquet. Will they frame us for this?" Things that had been planned out could not be called a coincidence. "I'm fine." Li Hongyuan wasn't sure how many assassins there were and he only brought 2 guards with him. Jingwan's current situation was special. If anything were to happen to her, she would be in trouble. Therefore, Li Hongyuan didn't plan to go over. Jingwan obviously saw through his thoughts. "Ah Yuan, being late and not being there are 2 different things." "I know, but all those people added together can't compare to one of your fingers. I'm very happy to be so loved by you, but if that's the case, I'm afraid we'll be in trouble later. Assassins are not guards. No matter how many there are, they can't be much." At the critical moment, Jingwan's IQ was absolutely online. Li Hongyuan frowned. "Then you must follow me closely." "Don't worry." Li Hongyuan pulled Jingwan, followed by Gong Mama, Hei Mei, and 2 guards. As they got closer, Jingwan also heard the noise. The noise was getting more and more obvious. 2 people suddenly rushed out from the side and happened to bump into Jingwan and the others. The 2 people were stunned at first, probably because they didn't expect to encounter such a situation. Then, with a fierce look, they put their hands in front of their chests. The daggers, which were blue under the light, were obviously smeared with poison and were stained with blood. They rushed quickly toward Jingwan and the others. It was not the first time Jingwan had encountered such a situation. She didn't panic, but the hand holding Li Hongyuan slightly tightened. Li Hongyuan's thumb gently rubbed the back of her hand to comfort her. Gong Mama and Hei Mei didn't move, but the 2 guards went up to them without fear. As a prince, although he could bring 2 guards into the palace, he was still not allowed to bring weapons. Bare-handed against 2 assassins with poisoned daggers, he didn't know how poisonous the daggers were. If it was a slow poison, then it was okay. But if it was the kind of poison that killed at the sight of blood, a small wound could cause him to lose his life. Li Hongyuan's 2 guards were shadow guards. They were better at dealing with this kind of crafty assassination method than traditional martial arts. Although Jingwan didn't understand much, she also found that the 2 people from the prince's fu had the upper hand. But because of the other party's poisoned daggers, they couldn't let go. Otherwise, they might have already taken them down. The clothes of these 2 people were too obvious. With just a glance, it could be distinguished. One was a dancer, the other was a palace eunuch from the imperial kitchen. They clearly belonged to the kind of people who looked weak, but at this moment, their moves were unusually fierce. Although the two guards of Jin Qin Wang Fu didn't see blood, but the places where their clothes were cut were not few. In the blink of an eye, they had already fought more than 10 rounds. Soon, Yu Zhongqing chased after them with several imperial guards. When he saw the current situation, he joined in without hesitation. They had swords with them, and they had an absolute advantage in numbers. It was only a matter of time before they could take them down. As Jing Wan watched attentively, Li Hongyuan suddenly let go of her hand, grabbed her waist and retreated. Seeing the shining swords chopping towards Jing Wan and the others, it turned out that there were also assassins among the imperial guards. When both sides were like fire and water, one of them suddenly turned towards Jing Wan and the others. However, the assassin might have thought that they were distracted, but Li Hongyuan never relaxed his vigilance from beginning to end. At this time, he only believed in himself, and even divided his attention to his back. In the process of Li Hongyuan bringing Jing Wan and retreating, after all, there were two people and their movements were hindered. The other party's blade was getting closer and closer. Suddenly, he brought Jing Wan to the side, causing the assassin's blade to cut empty air. Then Li Hongyuan kicked the other party's wrist. The blade clearly changed direction, but it didn't fall off. Looking closely, it turned out that the assassin had wrapped the hilt of the blade around his hand. However, Li Hongyuan's kick was enough to break the other party's bones. With severe pain, how could he continue to use the blade? So much so that Li Hongyuan didn't make another move. The assassin only thought that he was being looked down upon. Seizing the opportunity, his other hand reached into his bosom. However, before he could take out the dagger, his eyes suddenly widened in disbelief. Then he met with a pair of cold and emotionless eyes, and the owner of those eyes was actually a middle-aged woman. With unwillingness, the assassin's body softened and fell to the ground. Although it happened quickly, Jing Wan also saw clearly that the assassin only paid attention to them, and her husband didn't make another move. Unexpectedly, Nanny Gong suddenly rushed out from behind. It was the first time that Jing Wan saw Nanny Gong move so fast. Nanny Gong held the hairpin in her left hand, and her right hand went straight into the assassin's bosom. When the hairpin pierced into the assassin's neck, Nanny Gong changed the direction of the dagger and directly pierced into his body. Nanny Gong stepped back, but didn't pull out the hairpin. It wasn't the first time that she had seen such a scene. For Jing Wan, it was still a little exciting. However, Jing Wan's eyes didn't move away. Looking at the man who was gradually dying on the ground, a pool of blood quickly appeared under him, and the blood from his neck kept flowing out through the hairpin. Obviously, it was caused by the two main arteries being injured in both places. However, wasn't the hairpin's lethality a little too strong? Jing Wan suddenly thought of a possibility. What if the hairpin was shaped like a triangular thorn? Jing Wan moved her eyes to the place where the hairpin was connected to the assassin's neck. Because of her good eyesight, she could see clearly in the dim light. Sure enough. Commander! A cry of surprise attracted Jing Wan's attention. Yu Zhongqing's body fell forward, and his back took a solid hit. However, his reaction was fast enough. He quickly turned around and blocked the second hit. Yu Zhongqing's eyes were cold. Even if the opponent was his brother, he showed no mercy at this moment. Jing Wan clenched her fists tightly. It was obvious that there was more than one person in the imperial army who was problematic. However, under the circumstances just now, everyone thought that there was only one. The second person suddenly made a move and even attacked them from behind. It was impossible to guard against. Perhaps he knew that it was impossible to succeed in attacking Li Hongyuan and Jing Wan, so he chose Yu Zhongqing. The dancer and little eunuch from before were like arrows at the end of their flight. They were quickly taken down. Several imperial guards turned around to help Yu Zhongqing. Perhaps it was because of anger, the eunuch was directly killed. When everything was over, they all stood there in a daze. However, the good brothers who used to hang around each other's shoulders when they had nothing to do were now unconsciously on guard against each other. They were even at a loss of what to do. Obviously, because of what happened just now, they had become a little paranoid. You are the imperial guards carefully selected by the emperor. You are responsible for the safety of the palace. Look at you now, what are you doing? You were in a hurry before, so you were taken advantage of. Now, can't you tell that the people around you are not your own brothers? Yu Zhongqing did not speak harshly. His voice was still calm. It was also because of this calmness that the imperial guards regained their senses and quickly recovered. At this moment, Yu Zhongqing was not very good. He was a little dazed and his body seemed to be a little stiff. He did not feel pain from the wound on his back. Instead, he felt numbness. However, he felt a chill down below. It was also a little sticky. It was obvious that he was still bleeding. If you don't want to die, quickly go to the imperial doctor, Li Hongyuan said coldly. The others only then realized that Yu Zhongqing was injured. They all became anxious, so they took care of Yu Zhongqing again. The assassins on the ground were thrown to the side. Obviously, they looked like they had recovered, but their hearts were still a little weak. That was why they appeared to be a little out of it. Li Hongyuan looked on coldly from the sidelines. Therefore, from his point of view, although these imperial guards looked pretty good, they were still stable in the palace. These people were still lacking in many things. Their psychological quality was not up to standard. Yu Zhongqing naturally understood this as well. However, he was a little powerless right now. Don't worry about me, go take a look. Okay, leave 2 people here. I will help you deal with it. You should take care of your own life. Thank you, Your Highness. Yu Zhongqing also knew that now was not the time to be brave. If he completely failed this time, he would probably die with grievances. He had not taken his revenge. Li Hongyuan did not care about the 2 helpless imperial guards. He let the guard check the situation of the assassins. Guard Qian squatted down and stretched out his hand to check one by one. Master, they are all dead. These 2 committed suicide by taking poison. Li Hongyuan's gaze fell on the dancer and the little eunuch. Yes. However, they did not put the poison in their mouths. They took the poison in advance. Li Hongyuan pulled Jingwan away. Clean it up. When they arrived at the place where the banquet was held, the entire place was already in a mess. There were also cries that sounded as if the sky was falling and the earth was collapsing. This was because several young princes and imperial grandsons had died, and countless were injured. The number of people lying on the ground was far more than expected. Although it was impossible to tell who was the assassin and who was the victim based on their clothes, it was still possible to tell from their hands. Moreover, these people basically all had weapons in their hands. Li Hongyuan roughly scanned the area. The number of assassins was more than expected. Adding all of them together, it was already in the double digits. According to the 4 assassins they encountered, there should not be any survivors. However, even so, it was enough to show that there was a loophole in the palace's defense. Regardless of whether the main responsibility this time was Zhongqing's, if he did not die this time, he would lose a layer of skin after this. However, at this time, he should be in charge of the overall situation. Where was the person who was fearless and showing the power of heaven? The smell of blood was a little heavy. With the death of those children, Jingwan was clearly seriously affected. She covered her mouth with a handkerchief and wanted to vomit. After all, pregnant people were especially sensitive to smell. Moreover, there was also a psychological stimulation. There were already people at the scene who took the initiative to take care of the follow-up matters. Even if there was no one, Li Hongyuan would only care about his wife at this moment. He took Jingwan and left without a trace of politeness. However, he did not leave the palace. Instead, he took Jingwan to Qin Shu Fei's Sweet Dew Palace. This choice did not seem to be a problem. Originally, he thought that after such a thing happened, everyone would be in a panic. Most people's first reaction would be to gather together and not be separated. Therefore, Qin Shu Fei should not be in Sweet Dew Palace. The reality was a little unexpected. Qin Shu Fei looked to be in good spirits. She should not have been frightened. After learning of Jingwan's situation, she immediately asked someone to bring her some sour plums. Did Sweet Dew Palace just happen to have something like sour plums? Clearly, it was specially prepared for Jingwan. Although he did not know when Jingwan would enter the palace, she might not come to Sweet Dew Palace after entering the palace. However, this was Qin Shufei and Huang Guifei's kind intentions. According to the special relationship between Qin Shufei and Huang Guifei, it could be said that Qin Shufei treated Li Hongyuan as a son. If it was really like this, there was nothing wrong with it. Under normal circumstances, Jin Qin Wang was a man of few words. Therefore, he should not be expected to say anything at this time. He quietly embraced Jingwan and gently stroked her back. Seeing that Qin Shufei did not have any change in expression, Jingwan did not push Li Hongyuan away. She suppressed the nausea and tried not to think about those stimulating scenes as much as possible. She began to ask about the assassins. Today's matter was really too serious. This assassination was obviously carefully arranged. There was a plan, a clear goal, and the method was also sinister. Taking poison in advance, regardless of whether the mission was completed or whether they could escape unscathed, they would undoubtedly die. Without any survivors, there were many things that could not be investigated. This also meant that anything could happen. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, the scene that stimulated Jingwan was also thrown to the side. The eunuchs serving the dishes, dancers, musicians, and assassins seemed to have appeared from all directions. Their main target seemed to be the emperor, but their targets were also the princes. By the time the imperial guards arrived, the situation was already chaotic and the tragedy had already been caused. Qin Shufei's face was a little pale and she still had lingering fears. Upon closer inspection, her clothes were still a little dirty. She didn't have the time to change, or perhaps she didn't have the strength to change. Thus, the impact on Qin Shufei was more serious than it looked. Jingwan did not urge and waited for Qin Shufei to calm down. Su Guifei blocked a fatal blow for the emperor. If it was not good, I'm afraid that her life would be in danger. The situation was not yet under control and the emperor hurriedly carried Su Shi to the Jade Essence Palace. The amount of information was huge. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan looked at each other, seeming to have smelled something. Later, it was the Gong Prince who stood up to stabilize the situation, then it was Kong Prince, and then the other princes also competed to show off. Qin Shufei had always been a calm and peaceful person, but at this time, she showed a slightly mocking expression. She clearly saw that those princes, when the assassins rushed towards them, more than once they grabbed the people around them to block, rolling and crawling, where was the slightest bit of their usual manners. It should be known that all the princes had martial arts masters. When they fought on the martial arts field, they looked like they were skilled, but when it came to the end, none of them stood up to protect their wives and children. Qin Shufei restrained the expression on her face. The imperial concubines were all forced by them to return to their respective palaces. You need to pay attention, at that time, the emperor's descendants and the imperial concubines should have been present, but you were the only ones absent. No matter what, those people will put this matter on you, so you must think of a way to deal with it. Whether it was anger or shifting the blame, what Qin Shufei said was inevitable. If it really was Bun Wang's plan, how could they still be alive? Li Hongyuan said quite conceitedly. Qin Shufei believed his words, but the problem was, he couldn't say that to outsiders. If he said it, it would be the same as exposing himself. Jingwan patted him. Be serious. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan, then looked at Qin Shufei. I know. Hearing that, this pair of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law both breathed a sigh of relief, choosing to believe 100%. Afterwards, after drinking a few mouthfuls of tea, Luqing Emperor's personal steward hurried over. Newbie greets Xu Fei Nyongyang, Wang Ye, Wang Fei Nyongyang. In this kind of situation, coming to find Jin Qin Wang was definitely a difficult task. Dispense with the formalities. Why are you coming to Sweet Dew Palace now? How is Gui Fei Nyongyang? Qin Shufei asked. Answering Nyongyang, Gui Fei Nyongyang's life is in danger. The emperor ordered Newbie to come see Wang Ye. The head eunuch carefully looked at Li Hongyuan, the emperor asked Wang Ye to call Jin Qin Wang Fu's doctor to immediately enter the palace. Looking at Li Hongyuan, he didn't have the slightest reaction, as if Jin Qin Wang wasn't him. Jing Wan glanced at him. It was fine to just casually pretend, but if he was implicated, wouldn't he be tired? I know, bodyguard Qian is outside, let him make a trip. Gong Gong can return to Fu Huang's side to wait. In case there is a need, he can lend a hand. Jing Wan directly made the decision. Yes. The head eunuch's heart was practically filled with tears. Jin Qin Wang Fei was really a good person. After they left, Qin Shufei jokingly said, "There are several high-ranking women in the inner palace. Now only Wei Xianfei hasn't been treated by your Fu's doctor. This person is also being raised in Jin Qin Wang Fu. If it was another place, she would definitely have been sent to the imperial hospital by the emperor. Wei Xianfei may not have any serious problems. Even if there is, she probably won't have that life." Jing Wan had a slight smile, but her words were particularly cold and ruthless. This caused Li Hongyuan to be somewhat surprised. Qin Shufei stared blankly, but then, no matter why she said this, they didn't feel that it was inappropriate. "I'm guessing that it won't just be the doctors in your residence. Prince Rui's family will also be entering the palace soon. Who knows, Su She might even want to see you," Qin Shufei said faintly. Obviously, if Gue Fei Su didn't grasp such a good opportunity, then she would have lived in vain. Grass would have long grown on her grave, and her bones would have turned to soil. So what if they turned over? If they can step on them once, twice, then they can step on them 3 or 4 times. Li Hongyuan really didn't care much about this matter. What he cared about was that relying on Prince Rui's people, they wouldn't be able to do what they did tonight. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/1473983. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gur mobile reading website bicken.com. Chapter 546. So, who was the mastermind behind tonight's show? Just as she was thinking about this question, Jing Wan also asked, "Does a Yuan have any suspects?" "There is. If the guess is true, then things may be very interesting." "Interesting? A lot of people died. What was there to be interesting about? Or was it that the interesting in someone's mouth was different from the understanding of ordinary people? Compared to his usual behavior, it seemed that the latter was more likely. Jing Wan felt that she should prepare to light a candle for someone. Let's not mention this matter for the time being. If Imperial concubine Su makes a comeback, she definitely won't be content with her lot. I don't know what will happen. After being targeted by Imperial concubine Su many times, even though she didn't succeed every time and she herself was unharmed, Jing Wan still felt quite annoyed. That was a mask that had been worn for a long time and suppressed for a long time. Once it broke out, it became distorted and perverted. The bargaining chips in Su She's hands are basically gone. In the end, she is just trapped in the harem and can't make any waves. Li Hongming went down once, and at least half of the people who were optimistic about him left. At this time, even if those people turned back, Li Hongming would disregard former enmity and be willing to accept them again. However, there is a phrase called settling accounts at an opportune time. Those people are not stupid. How could they not think of this point? So even if they feel that they miscalculated and walked the wrong way, they will still grit their teeth and continue walking. Moreover, they will do everything possible to help their new master and completely kill Li Hongming. No one will like a traitor. We don't have to do anything. After a period of time, Li Hongming will still be in a terrible fix. So to say, this mother and son pair, even if they climbed up again, in fact, they were far from the original threat. The head eunuch by Lu Chengdi's side returned not long after. This time, when he faced Li Hongyuan, he seemed even more apprehensive. He stammered and couldn't express himself clearly for a long time. After all, at that time, Jin Qin Wang and Gue Fei Nyongyang had completely broken off their relationship. Therefore, now that Gue Fei Nyongyang wanted to see Jin Qin Wang, if by any chance she angered Jin Qin Wang, the person who passed on the message would be angered and killed on the spot by Jin Qin Wang. Therefore, he really didn't dare to say it. Why did such a chore always fall on his head? Clearly, there were other people by the emperor's side. Sitting in the manager's position and being deeply trusted, shouldn't he be enjoying limitless glory? He was probably the most miserable chief steward in history. It was said that accompanying a monarch was like accompanying a tiger. This master was not a monarch, but he was even more terrifying than one. At this moment, the head eunuch inexplicably admired the colleague, who had always been by Jin Qin Wang's side. That was a truly capable person. After so many years, he could still live well. He was clearly the emperor's personal manager, but when facing him, he couldn't hold it up. Therefore, shouldn't he not care about these things and instead learn from him? Li Hongyuan tried his best to restrain his temper. However, the path he had chosen made him even more arrogant and reckless. Therefore, he had to endure when it came to important matters. Apart from that, he gave all his patience and good temper to Jingwan. Because Lu Chengdi's chief steward had made him wait for a long time, the teacup had already landed accurately on his head. He screamed, but that sound was swallowed back in a very short time. The hand that subconsciously covered his forehead also quickly moved away. Above his eyes, there was a bloody handprint. Blood was still flowing out, quickly blurring his vision. His body couldn't stop trembling slightly, because of pain and also because of fear. At this time, he didn't dare to hesitate anymore. Like pouring beans, he explained the matter clearly without panting. Li Hongyuan was expressionless. What does Su Shi think Ben Wang is? A kitten or puppy that she can call to come and go as she pleases? Ben Wang and her have already been written off. You bring these words back for Ben Wang. If anyone dares to come again for this matter, I will definitely make sure that they won't be able to return. Li Hongyuan fiercely slammed the small square table at his hand. The square table directly split into pieces. In the end, the head eunuch only had one eye covered. Seeing this, he rejoiced. His legs trembled even more. If this palm hit his body, he reckoned that his little life would be gone. Yes, Nubi will withdraw. Compared to a living king of hell, he was even more willing to face the emperor's anger. In the Jade Essence Palace, which was originally bleak, now seemed to have recovered its former liveliness. However, imperial concubine Su was lying on the bed, her breath hanging by a thread. That knife had directly pierced into her heart, and because of the poison, the blood couldn't be stopped. She used a white cloth to tightly press it down, staining it red one after another. The head eunuch came back to report. Imperial concubine Su might have heard a sound, so she tried her best to open her eyes. Her consciousness was a little blurry. After looking for a while, she couldn't find the figure she was looking for. The tears in the corners of her eyes suddenly rolled down. Your Majesty, Yuan, is he really not willing to see me again, even if it's the last time? No, Yuan is a good child, a filial child. Zhen will send someone else. Imperial concubine Su smiled bitterly. Yes, Yuan is a good child. It's me who has let him down. It's all my fault. It seemed that speaking was consuming her vitality, so Imperial concubine Su's face became more and more pale. But I'm just jealous. I clearly love your Majesty so much, your Majesty, but your Majesty only has my sister in his heart. I want to treat Yuan wholeheartedly, but he looks more and more like my sister. This concubine's heart is like being eaten by thousands of ants and insects, like being fried by a raging fire. It's like this every day and night. I keep telling myself that Yuan is innocent, he's the only one my sister left for your Majesty, so I can't. Imperial concubine Su opened her heart. At this moment, she no longer concealed her ugly heart. However, all men had bad natures. No matter how ugly a woman's heart was, if everything was based on her true feelings for him, then their vanity would be greatly satisfied. In this way, it seemed that no matter how big a mistake this woman had made, she could be forgiven. Lu Chengdi was almost in such a state now. He had completely forgotten about the imperial concubine. What's more, as the saying goes, a dying man speaks the truth. Imperial concubine Su still took the knife for him. Lu Chengdi couldn't help but tremble at the thought of this injury on his body. Looking at this injury, she must have risked her life. Therefore, at this moment, whatever imperial concubine Su said was the truth. He only needed to nod and say, "Okay, okay, okay." However, imperial concubine Su was obviously a smart person. She wouldn't ask for anything at this time. Even if she really couldn't escape this disaster, she would never ask for anything. What she asked for would erase the kindness. What she wanted was for Lu Chengdi to give it to her willingly. What she asked for might only be one or two things, but what the emperor gave on his own initiative might be unlimited. In order to turn things around, imperial concubine Su really gambled with her life. Rather than being humiliated and waiting to die in the Jade Essence Palace, it was better to die while being remembered by the emperor. Just like that B*TCH Pei Shi, imperial concubine Su was certain that if she was still alive, the emperor would not have treasured her as much as he did in the beginning. If she had been used properly, perhaps her relationship with the emperor would have dropped to the freezing point long ago. However, she died at that moment and left the deepest mark in the emperor's heart. So much so that the emperor still could not forget her even after dozens of years and endlessly doted on the B*TCH she left behind. It was a pity that imperial concubine Su realized this a little late. Otherwise, she wouldn't have schemed so ruthlessly in the morning. At least, she wouldn't have let that bastard die. Now, she grasped this point and gambled with her life. It would be best if he could survive, but if he couldn't, her son shouldn't have any problems in the future. After going through all the previous things, she believed that her son's temperament would become more mature and cautious. He wouldn't make mistakes easily and wouldn't be caught by others. The throne was within reach. Your Majesty, this concubine knows that Yuan will definitely not want to see this concubine again. Your Majesty, there's no need to force him. This concubine is just regretful that I lost my mind and vented my anger on him. Yuan is clearly the most pitiful and the most innocent. He doesn't want to see this concubine and doesn't want to forgive this concubine. It's right. As imperial concubine Su spoke, her voice became weaker and weaker, as if she couldn't continue speaking. This concubine will personally bring that bastard here. There were many reasons why Lu Chengdi doted on imperial concubine Su for so many years, but there was still some affection in it. After all, imperial concubine Su was a woman who could attract many men in all aspects. It was just that imperial concubine Su stepped on Lu Chengdi's reverse scale, so he hated her. Once she grasped Lu Chengdi's mind, it wouldn't be difficult for her to get back. Lu Chengdi was a person who cherished old relationships. It was just that the imperial concubine was too special to him, so it didn't show on others. Imperial concubine Su pulled Lu Chengdi's sleeve. She could have brushed it away with a light flick, but Lu Chengdi didn't dare to use force. No, Your Majesty, don't go. If this concubine dies, Yuan will still hate me. Did imperial concubine Su want to see Li Hongyuan? Of course not. If the adopted son whom she finally realized she didn't know anything about really came, the situation she created would be destroyed. She was sure that Li Hongyuan wouldn't see her, so she put on such a show. Obviously, she wanted to see him very much. Now, she had to bear the pain of not seeing him. She created a more stable image for herself, and at the same time, she discredited that bastard. Okay, I'll do as you say. Don't talk any more. Imperial concubine Su closed her eyes, as if she would never wake up. Lu Chengdi was all kinds of anxious. The imperial physicians were still trying their best to save her, but they couldn't determine what kind of poison it was. They could only use the most conventional methods, which were obviously ineffective. Seeing that the blood was still flowing, Lu Chengdi cursed the quack doctor and kicked him away. He almost ordered people to drag him out and behead him. Li Hongming entered the palace very quickly. He was one step behind Gong Jiu, but he arrived at the Jade Essence Palace before Gong Jiu. Because he was worried about his mother, he didn't care about anything else and rushed into the palace. After entering the palace, he didn't even get off the horse, which seemed to be understandable. Mother, mother. Li Hongming ran in a hurry, completely disregarding his manners. He seemed to only have Imperial Concubine Su in his heart. He threw himself to Imperial Concubine Su's side, even ignoring Lu Chengdi. Mother, mother, how are you? He reached out his hand carefully, as if he wanted to touch her, but he didn't dare to. He was afraid that the slightest touch would hurt her. Mother, it's your son. Look at me, okay? Mother. The man's tears also rolled down in an instant. It was said that men didn't cry easily, let alone a prince. But at this time, no one would blame him. Lu Chengdi looked at him and felt incomparably bitter. This was the woman he once doted on, the son he was most optimistic about. Lu Chengdi couldn't help but reach out and pat him on the shoulder. Your mother will be fine. Imperial father, Li Hongming's lips trembled, as if he just noticed Lu Chengdi. Your son was rude just now. What time is it now? Why do you still care about manners? Ming. Imperial Concubine Su called out in a low voice. She wanted to open her eyes, but her eyelids were like 1,000 gold. Your Majesty, this concubine seems to have heard Ming Er's voice. Mother, mother, it's your son. I'm coming. Li Hongming grabbed Imperial Concubine Su. Imperial Concubine Su struggled to open her eyes. Before I die, I can see you one last time, mother, mother. Mother, don't talk nonsense. You'll be fine. Imperial physician, why don't I see the Imperial physician? Imperial father, what did the Imperial physician say? What did he say? Why can't I see anyone? Li Hongming shouted hysterically. Because talking to Lu Chengdi was like shouting at him. Lu Chengdi didn't mind at this time. There's poison on the weapon. Ordinary detoxification methods won't work. The Imperial physician is investigating what kind of poison it is. It's only possible to prescribe the right medicine. Li Hongming swallowed back the words he wanted to say. He clenched his teeth, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Your Majesty, Jin Qin Wang Fu's physician has arrived. The palace servant outside hurriedly reported. Why haven't you called him in yet? Lu Chengdi and Li Hongming spoke at the same time. Gong Jiu strode in and was about to salute, but Li Hongming grabbed him and pulled him over with all his strength. Quickly save my mother. There were still traces of tears on his face. Gong Jiu subconsciously wanted to shake off Li Hongming. If he really did that, it would be easy to do. In the end, he restrained himself. Gong Jiu took Imperial Concubine Su's pulse, asking Your Majesty to move. This person is about to die. You guys aren't physicians. What's the use of surrounding her? At this time, Lu Chengdi was very obedient. His movements were also very smooth. Gong Jiu impolitely sat in Lu Chengdi's original position and spread out the needle case. There was a row of shining silver needles. His finger slid across it and then he took out one. Just as he was about to start, Gong Jiu suddenly paused. Your Majesty, Imperial Concubine Nyongyang has lost too much blood. Some of the blood has coagulated. To avoid causing an impact, we may need to touch Imperial Concubine Nyongyang's body. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. Even if the other party was an old woman, she was still the Emperor's woman. So to prevent Lu Chengdi's possessiveness from causing mischief, it was best to make it clear in advance. In the eyes of a physician, isn't there only the patient and not the difference between men and women? Lu Chengdi was very righteous. He just didn't know if it was because, in any case, she was already so old. Even if she was cured, Zhang wouldn't sleep. So what if she was touched by another man? It's not like he was wearing a green hat. Thank you, Imperial Father. Li Hongming was really afraid that Lu Chengdi would give up on the treatment. Obviously, Lu Chengdi's IQ was also online at this time. In any case, he was the savior of imperial concubine Nyong. If he didn't treat imperial concubine Nyong because of this, it might be understood from a man's point of view. But from a reasonable point of view, it wouldn't be understood. After getting permission, Gong Zhou no longer hesitated. He tore imperial concubine Su's clothes a little. It looked like a bloody mess and her skin couldn't be seen. Then, his left hand felt around the wound and the silver needle in his right hand steadily fell. Looking at the current situation, it was obvious that the first step was to stop the bleeding. Otherwise, imperial concubine Su might bleed to death before the detoxification. Gong Zhou's silver needle hemostasis technique could be said to be superb. With just a few needles, he easily did what a group of imperial doctors couldn't do. Then, Gong Zhou took out the prepared disinfectant alcohol, medical cotton, and tweezers from his medical box. Obviously, these things also came from Jingwan. It wasn't too difficult. Since she said it, Li Hongyuan's subordinates could naturally get it. Gong Zhou casually handed it to Li Hongming. Use this to clean imperial concubine Su's wound. Remember not to touch the silver needle. Gong Zhou went to write a few prescriptions and explained it to Lu Chengdi's people. After that, he didn't ask any more questions. Imperial concubine Su's palace maid cleaned her wound, but it was obvious that she had never done such a thing before. Originally, she could hold the embroidery needle as if it was flying, but now, she was clumsy, making people anxious. Moreover, Gong Zhou only stopped imperial concubine Su's bleeding, but he didn't stop the pain. Once the alcohol was applied, the stinging pain caused imperial concubine Su to groan in pain. Her face was so pale that there was no trace of blood. The palace maid's hands trembled even more, afraid that she had hurt her master. Gong Zhou could clearly relieve her pain. During the trauma surgery in the northwest, he didn't use silver needles to relieve pain. Obviously, it was because the other party didn't get along with her master. He was black-hearted and deliberately did it. He couldn't use other methods, so this was a small matter. What's going on? What is this? Imperial concubine mother wasn't like this just now. Li Hongming grabbed Gong Zhou's lapel and questioned him with an unkind expression. Gong Zhou rudely pried Li Hongming's hand away. Third Prince, please calm down. This is to prevent imperial concubine Su's wound from becoming red and swollen. It will only increase the pain. Other than that, there won't be any other effect. This is something that can't be helped. He explained indifferently. The way he addressed Li Hongming was purely out of disgust. Li Hongming's face was dark, but he couldn't say anything. He was reduced to a commoner and didn't have a noble title. Under normal circumstances, calling him a prince was already giving him face. The status of a prince was much more honorable than that of a commoner. It was just that Lu Chengdi didn't give an edict to remove his name from the imperial family. However, it was obvious that after Li Hongming fell down, he still hadn't learned his lesson. The thing that existed in his bones still hadn't been smoothed out. Otherwise, he should know that he shouldn't easily offend a doctor, especially one who was not under his control but had excellent medical skills. When he needed him, he could quietly kill you. However, there was a trace of doubt in Lu Chengdi's eyes. Imperial concubine Su has never been like this before. Replying to your majesty, Imperial concubine Su has been poisoned by a special kind of snake venom. At first, the wound will be numb and she won't feel any pain. Only after a period of time will this numbness disappear. Imperial concubine Su has obviously passed that time. This kind of pain is within the range of ordinary people, so your majesty doesn't need to worry. Lu Chengdi nodded and didn't speak anymore. Gong Zhou looked at her coldly. You'd better hurry up. Imperial concubine Su's current situation doesn't allow for any delay. Hearing this, the palace maid was also anxious. However, the more anxious she was, the more flustered she became. The more flustered she was, the more unstable her hands were. She almost spilled the wine. The palace maid was so scared that she knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, please forgive me. Your Highness, please forgive me. Lu Chengdi and Li Hongming's faces were gloomy. Scram, useless thing. Gong Zhou, it's better if you do it. Yes. He picked up a pair of tweezers, picked up a piece of cotton, dipped it in alcohol, and directly rubbed it on Imperial Concubine Sue's wound. His movements were clean and nimble, but it was obvious that he wasn't gentle at all. He directly stuffed the cotton into the wound. Li Hongming saw that he was so crude and clenched his fists. Unruly commoner, you have big guts. You actually dare to use underhanded methods. His fist swung out. In his view, Gong Zhou was a person of Jin Qin Wang Fu, so he didn't have good intentions. Gong Zhou dodged and expressionlessly looked at Li Hongming. If you don't clean it up properly, the one who will suffer will only be Imperial Concubine Su. How about Wang Ye do it himself? He wasn't a real commoner, so how could Gong Zhou bow and bend his knees? Not only did he have a master behind him, he was also full of confidence. He didn't fear Li Hongming at all. Lao San, wait quietly for Zhen. Don't cause trouble. After cleaning up, Gong Zhou carefully checked Imperial Concubine Sue's pulse. Her lungs were indeed injured. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to be fatal. Gong Zhou hadn't reached the stage where he could perform internal surgery. Whether Imperial Concubine Su could survive or not would depend on her own good fortune. As for the poison, it was secondary. He knew what kind of poison it was and how to detoxify it. As long as he could detoxify it within the effective time, there was nothing to worry about. As for the truth, Gong Zhou also told Lu Chengdi the truth, so that he wouldn't have to take the blame if Imperial Concubine Su died. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/147430008 HTML chapter error. Please click here to report. No registration required. We will handle it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book: www.bicken.com. Biku Gu mobile reading website, bicken.com. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.